qualify for Europe for the first time in their short history. They were awful in the Champions League, and yet he was still affecting games. He was still scoring goals.
talkSPORT understands United are very keen, but will have to sell in order to raise funds for the €75 million Leipzig are asking for. Now, Andy Farrell's named his final Lions test squad, who could make history on Saturday. A win against the Wallabies in its 3-0. The first time a touring Lions squad would have achieved that in almost 100 years. Our rugby correspondent Alfie Reynolds has the details.
This weekend, James Ryan comes into the second row. That means Ollie Chesham goes back to the bench and James Lowe drops out of the 23 entirely. Blair Kinghorn comes onto the wing and there's a place for Ben Earl on the bench. A 6-2 bench split between forwards and backs.
Live and exclusive coverage of that final test gets underway at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. And Tom Brady's told talkSPORT he wants to take Birmingham City up through the EFL the proper way. Ahead of the new season, the Blues owner has told talkSPORT they're living in the moment and not dwelling on the ill-fated spell under Wayne Rooney.
I have very high expectations for what leadership looks like, and I really felt like in a time that I had, we have to give everything we can to the players.
Remember, Birmingham open the championship season next Friday against Ipswich. That one's exclusively live on talkSPORT.
Here we go, brand new studios for myself and Simon Jordan. Good morning, you are listening to Ade Oladipo and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT. I'm in for Jim White this week. Lots of ground to cover today. The Lions have announced their team for the third test down under. We are going to be joined by the great Eddie Jones. Look forward to hearing what he has to say. It looks like the ruling for Man City's case, yep, that one will now be released in October at the earliest. I don't know why the delay. We're going to see if we can find out more information. Football finance expert Stephen Borson will be on the show. And why are footballers the target of gangs? Security expert Jeff Hill, former senior police detective, will be explaining a bit more. And it's Thursday, so our boxing pundit, the great Spencer Oliver, will be joining us to discuss the latest boxing news from midday as well. Plenty to get through. This is Ade Oladipo and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
100% engagement. Jim White and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
Simon, new studios. What do you make of it? You like it?
Well, it's very bright, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I spent the entire 3 months complaining about being downstairs. And now I've got used to being downstairs and I'm going to start complaining about being
I have a feeling this way.
It's very smart.
Yeah.
It's very fit for purpose, isn't it? 21st century, as it should be for such a major news organisation.
Agreed. I'm concerned for you when it comes to the AC. Are we okay AC-wise? Because I know this is a big complaint of yours.
Indeed.
Yes.
We'll attend to it.
We'll attend to it, indeed. We've got 3 hours to make sure that we get the AC perfect to Simon's needs. Rangers drew 1-0 with Panathinaikos. We touched on it briefly yesterday. Rangers are through to the next stage of Champions League qualification. They'll take on Victoria Pleasant. It wasn't the best performance, but ultimately they're through, and that's what counts.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, you're not looking at a team that's fully formed, fully formulated, and reflective of the manager's wishes, because he's only been there for a period of time. You cannot get a better outcome for Russell Martin. It was important that he overcome this initial obstacle. People would have put Panathinaikos down as a difficult side. You know, I don't know how good they are as a matter of course, but they have a reputation of being a decent side.
They're a European side.
They're a European side. So the fact they've gone through, whether they've played well or not, they've beaten them 2-0 at home and they were under pressure there, but they rode that storm out. They've gone away, got a draw, got through. As good as it gets. Now, what you don't want to do, you don't want to lose the momentum, and you don't want to lose to a team in the Czech Republic that people now will expect you to beat because they have a real opportunity. And I'm pleased for Russell Martin. I, like others, have turned around and been critical of the belief that he has ideologies that he wasn't prepared to pivot from. But he's gone into Rangers with a new ownership model. There's been a sort of underwhelmed sort of blowback response to him being there. I think he's conducted himself relatively well in press conferences. He's played on the narrative that he's been there before a little bit, understands the scale and size of the football club. But to get through the first qualifying round and to give yourself a guaranteed outcome in Europe, which means you're playing in the Europa League, which is something Palace would probably bite their arms off for.
We'll talk about them
in response. But I think well done to him and well done to Rangers. And hopefully it's a beginning of a new dawn. It's not... obviously they always say it's the darkest before the dawn, but it's the beginning of a new opportunity for Scottish football to become competitive with the old firm leading it again. Because I think that's great for Scottish football. So well done Rangers.
Perfect start then for Russell Martin's new tenure as Rangers boss. Let's hear from the main man after the game.
I'm incredibly proud of them, the team, the staff, the fans were amazing. So it's a big night for us. I think, listen, we're playing against a really good team. They're in a really difficult place to play. Over the 2 games, they've been very good coach, good players. It's probably as tough a draw as we could have had. So they're going to have moments. But I think we started both games not well enough in the first half. But at half-time, the lads have composed themselves and done exactly what I asked them. And even after conceding the goal, it's the best response. And they stuck together, they fought, they dug in, and in the second half we played some really good football as well and should have had a few more moments ourselves, but we'll get better and they'll grow so much from that. So I'm really proud of everyone tonight, and I said to the players before the game at this football club, you have an opportunity not many people get to have nights like this and really brilliant moments and to make the most of it, and I'm really proud of them.
Speaks well, doesn't he? Russell Martin, their new Rangers boss, and look, it's a perfect start for him as Rangers boss. They are
because he's come out
to the next stage
because he's got a positive outcome.
Yeah.
So you would expect people to speak well in positive outcomes. Now, when we get some adversity is when you judge managers. So let's see how he speaks when he's been under a bit of pressure. But the outcome is good for him, and that's what you wanted. That's what they wanted. That's what he would have wanted, and it builds, like he says, it builds momentum and confidence and belief. He can start instilling and installing his wishes, because once things are proven to be outcomes are where you want them to be, then people start to buy in and subscribe. Yeah. So I am genuinely pleased for Rangers and pleased for him, because despite being criticised, being a football manager, despite all the upsides, all the benefits, all the opportunities, and some of the crap that they put out there in terms of how difficult it is for them, is a challenging job. It's scrutinised all day, every day by everybody, like us.
Rightly so.
Just to an extent, yeah. I think there's a balance between scrutiny and taking it towards narratives, which was a debate I was having with journalists yesterday, which you tried to correct on social media.
I enjoyed your little debate with Craig Hope. I enjoyed it. I tried to be judge and jury.
Hold them to account.
Yes.
Hold them to account.
Indeed. Another good thing for Russell Martin as well is that Gassama Jedi scored a new signing for him. And if you're asking the Rangers hierarchy to bankroll you, it's good to be bankrolled, and then for your signing.
Well, good for the player as well, because if he hits the ground running, players are like anything else. They build momentum, they build confidence, and if you believe you can do something, if you see it and it actually manifests itself, you keep on believing it's positive outcomes, isn't it?
Yeah. All right, let's talk about your former club, Crystal Palace. I almost feel like it's a defining month, or defining next 2 months at least, for Oliver Glasner. He bemoaned the fact he's only got 17 players in the squad, which is a point to the owners, like, give me money or else, basically. Yeah. And now they have this court decision with the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, to see whether or not, the decision by UEFA to demote them to the Conference League will stand. What do you think on that? Do you think it will stand? Do you think Palace have a leg here? Do you think?
Well, I don't think I can't see how they've got much of a leg. I mean, they're going to play all the ends against the middle. They're going to suggest that Nottingham Forest will give an extra latitude and show the culture that UEFA were allowing people to find solutions when solutions were past the deadline date. So they're going to try and play into that narrative.
Which is a good narrative.
Well, it's a reasonable narrative. It doesn't mean it's a legal narrative. So with that in mind, they'll make that argument. They can't make the arguments that they were making previously, that they don't consider themselves to be an MCO, because whether they like it or not, UEFA do. So you've got to stop running that argument. And you can't run the argument you didn't know, because it's bloody stupid, because they've even filed it in their own accounts in December of last year. They even acknowledged the existence of a need to conform with UEFA's governance. And by the way, it's been around for 17 years. It was there when I was there. And also 16 years, and also they've seen the RB outcomes in 2017 when the parameters were very clear. The only thing they can possibly complain about is deadlines, but the principles were still the same. So they've got to put their best foot forward. There was a point in my mind which I understand the angst and the ire of the Palace fans, and I understand their frustrations and the injustice of a slightly ridiculous situation where the present situation is not affected in the slightest, because the teams that are supposedly in conflict with one another don't share ownership anymore. So it's a ridiculous situation. I understand there has to be some governance and there has to be some time governance. But I also understand the principles of why people don't like multi-club ownership and why it perhaps hasn't been outlawed for the reasons we discussed yesterday, which is sophisticated owners want it and they've got more power and influence than some of the football authorities. But I also feel that it isn't a catastrophe it's a disappointment, but it isn't a catastrophe for them to drop into the European Conference League.
They could win that.
They could win that league. And then when you look at the economics of it, if you were to reasonably take up a thought process to say, well, what is the Europa League worth to Crystal Palace? You know, I would think a reasonable outcome for Palace is to get into the round of 16, possibly get knocked out in the 16s.
What's the difference between the finances of the Europa League and the Conference?
Well, that's what I'm about to say. If you got something like the final of the Europa Conference League, which is not beyond the wit of man because most English teams have done that recently, then you're going to get 20 to 25 million. If you get knocked out in the 16s of the Europa League, you're going to get something similar. Yeah. So with that in mind, and also the added benefit of getting to European Conference League and winning it is you get another season in Europe. So whilst it's not fair in terms of the morality of the fans thinking that on the pitch we deserve it, it is an outcome that could actually manifest itself in better outcomes. And it doesn't stop Crystal Palace, from buying players for Europe. It doesn't stop Crystal Palace from reasonably knowing what they've got to spend. Because if you're budgeting for a season, no one budgets to win the FA Cup.
Does it stop them from keeping players? If you are an Eberechi Eze, and he's been linked with a host of different clubs now, hasn't he? I mean, Arsenal, the latest, Liverpool are rumoured as well. Does it stop Eze from saying I would prefer to play in the Europa League?
It doesn't help him, right? And it doesn't help you in that argument. It's not advantageous to lose a bigger tournament than another. But let's have it right. If a big football club's knocking on Palace's door anyway, the player will already think halfway. If he wants to go there, he'll be going there. And he won't be necessarily looking at the fact that Palace could have been in the Europa League as the reasons why he wants to stay at a club that will be lesser than the club that's potentially going to buy him in statute terms. So whilst it doesn't help, I don't think it's a defining point and people can't weaponise it their way. They might choose to weaponise it. They might choose to suggest that the commercial ramifications of this decision are far-reaching, and Palace might make that part of their argument. The consequences of the decisions that you're making not only eliminate us from a European tournament, they compromise us financially, not just in terms of the revenue we can get, but in the terms of the players that we might lose or the players that we might not be able to buy. So all of these arguments will be thrown in amongst the mix. And we've seen that the Court of Arbitration of Sport adjudicates things slightly differently and is allowed to look at things through a slightly different prism. We've seen it with UEFA and their consequences of Man City and subsequently Man City getting it overturned because the frame of reference and the terms of reference were slightly different. I would be surprised, but I'd be happy to be surprised if the Court of Arbitration of Sport turned it around. And of course, Nottingham Forest are a respondent in this part of the equation. That's why they're rocking up with their two penneth.
Well, some might say as they should.
Well, not really, because they're standing.
We've seen this before.
Well, I'll tell you the reasons why I don't think they should. Because I don't like the idea you stand on the shoulders of giants. Palace are the giants in this equation. They're the team that qualified legitimately for the Europa League. You didn't. So what you're going to do is stand on the default position of Palace are trading in circumstances disadvantageous, and because Palace are bringing into the equation factually that there was correspondence between you and UEFA, which denoted that you were getting a different outcome as a result of you not complying, then it is a little bit of a liberty, but I understand why they're doing it.
Yeah, it's a bit cheeky. I guess ultimately for Palace fans, I mean, the argument about where they play in Europe's a good thing. The fact that we're sitting here, who would have guessed that 10 years ago to say that Palace are going to be either in Europa League or Conference League? Either outcome is good for where Palace were 10 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, some would say, and I would be in this argument, that Palace are quite a big club. And, once upon a time, Badge was a team of the 80s, going up, when I was a kid, watching Terry Venables as manager and Kenny Sampson and a raft of other players that went on to be top players at other football clubs, and the potential of the club getting crowds of 50,000 fans. And people describing it, you might say laughably, as the Man United of the South. That potential has not been realised for a lot of reasons. It wasn't realised because Ron Nodes bought the football club was more interested in lining his pocket. It wasn't realised because the football world changed and the economics of football changed dramatically, so the bigger clubs got even bigger. But they are arguably the biggest club in English football to have never won anything. Which is why that being rectified by winning in the FA Cup was such a meaningful thing. They've had 2 goes at it previously, lost to Man United both occasions. After being in front in both occasions, and this time round they've won the FA Cup, and realistically speaking, being in the Premier League for 10 years, 13 years, or however long they've kept themselves in there, which is brilliant, by the way, brilliant achievement from Parish and the club, no doubt about it. I would have killed for it. Nodes would have killed for it. Mark Goldberg was there for 5 minutes, who didn't get a chance to kill for it. But the point is, everyone would have wanted to be where they are. But there's also a reasonable amount of expectation that Palace, it's not beyond teams like Palace to win the League Cup and to win cups, because the component parts of the league are that so many teams are competitive now. But we'll see. And Glasner is right also, to go to your point about making noises, because he did swallow it. I do think managers should do as they're told every now and again, and they should get everything they want. This is not
as you would say,
not a kindergarten.
As you would say,
it's not a kindergarten, is it? Nobody in life gets everything they want and then stamps their feet if they don't. But there's a balance between what is a reasonable expectation for a manager to be managing a football club when he's a sought-after commodity, if he isn't given the tools to be able to continue to progress, you're going to have to realise as an owner, well, there's a potential I'm putting myself in harm's way here. Because whilst I don't give this guy everything he wants, I've got to give him everything he possibly needs and balance it between what he wants and what he needs. Otherwise, I'm going to find myself in the world of someone taking my manager. And when they take my manager, they disrupt my backroom staff and then they'll take my bloody players.
And Oliver Glasner right now is very, very hot, so you don't want
I think so, yeah.
Stefan Borson's going to join us a bit later, by the way, football finance expert. We'll touch on the Palace situation with him as well as Man City's situation, which is still ongoing. All right, you're listening to Oladipo and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. It is where the trade go. Next up, we're going to be looking ahead to the first North London derby to be taking place outside of the UK as Arsenal take on Spurs in Hong Kong. Good morning, you're listening to Ade Oladipo and Simon Jordan. Remember, with you until 1 o'clock. Hello to everyone now watching as well on YouTube. Loads. Do you see the numbers, by the way, this show does on YouTube? Incredible.
Yeah.
Do you know? Yeah, it's incredible. So loads of people watching on YouTube, loads of people listening to it in their cars as well. Wherever you're watching or listening to, hopefully you're enjoying the start of this show. All right, let's talk the North London derby, which will be played for the first time overseas in Hong Kong. Many people not happy about it. It's a friendly. It's a friendly. Are you too disappointed in this? I mean, it was always going to happen. There seems to be outcry that this is happening.
I'm not emotionally invested in either football club, so I wouldn't be offended by it. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with it. And if people are being offended on behalf of other people, I think they're bloody stupid. Listen, everyone accepts the fact that games get played. You know, how many times would you actually see Tottenham play Arsenal in a pre-season friendly in the first place? I mean, it's not traditionally a fixture that you would see, because ultimately the teams would be not looking at one another prior to a competitive season. They'd be off playing other people and getting their players tuned up.
Is it almost a sacred game that should only be for the Premier League? Or
if you want to be anal about it, yeah, you can be. If you want to be anal retentive about things and be all pious and judgmental, I mean, if it was a competitive game, if they were taking the Premier League fixture, I'd be at the front of the queue going, pack it in. But this is a monetary based agenda. It's two clubs playing one another. I'm surprised they actually are, given the nature of the relationships and given the fact that they are inevitably going to come as a result of a consequence of whoever wins this game being judged by it. Yeah. So if you're Spurs or playing Arsenal, that a team that are in ascendancy in terms of league form, why would you want to get a benchmark early in the season for the media to latch upon and say, well, how far you are away against your North London rivals? Or give the fans the opportunity to do it. It is simply a game that has resonance from perhaps an audience around the world in terms of seeing two of the so-called elite football clubs in the Premier League playing in a fixture that has zero meaning besides a little bit of extra cash into the respective clubs' bank balance. That's it. That's all. End of discussion.
You're very relaxed about it. Dean Saunders isn't. Dean Saunders was on the Breakfast Show and he said the game shouldn't be played abroad.
They've got a good manager there, Thomas Frank, but I wouldn't have got rid of Ange. I would have given him a chance this year. But saying that, Arsenal playing Spurs in Hong Kong, and you're surprised when you get a load of injuries. The season's only just finished.
Yeah.
And like you know,
it's money, Dino, isn't it? It's cash again.
Yeah, but don't complain when you get injuries. Don't come on the TV saying we've got loads of injuries.
I agree, mate. But it's, you know, it's like commercial now, isn't it?
Yeah, but like you were going on about player welfare. I do agree. It takes 3 weeks. If you've got an injury, 3 weeks it takes you to get fit. So at the end of the season, when you're carrying like little knocks that you've carried and you're playing through it, you need 3 weeks to rest and do nothing so your body heals itself. Some of these lads have got straight on planes and they're playing nonsense friendlies abroad right after the season's finished.
Yeah.
So they end up not having a proper pre-season.
Well, let's just cancel pre-season then.
Well, this
isn't a Tottenham Arsenal.
In that Jerry Maguire film where she says, "You had me at hello." Yeah. You know, he lost me at Ange Postecoglou. Make sense of it while you will. I don't see there's any coherence in his argument. Is he saying the intensity of the game is likely to be different between Arsenal and Tottenham, hence the reasons why they get injuries? Is he suggesting that we should have no pre-season? I don't quite know what Dean's point is, so I can't formulate any coherent argument to match his, because Arsenal playing Tottenham, it's economic. The game is funded by economics. Pre-season tours are part and parcel of the equation for everybody. Is the objection you don't like it because it's Tottenham and Man City and it offends your sensibilities, even though you've no support for either side? Is it because you think players are likely to get injured because there's an intensity between the two teams? Will you acknowledge the existence of a pre-season friendly is played at a certain tempo?
Which is probably what he's trying to say, isn't it? He thinks that it's going to be heightened because it's the derby.
Well, it's not, is it?
No, it won't.
It's not, because...
And multi-subs will be made as well.
It's an exhibition game.
Yeah.
That's what it is, with a big bag of money at the end of it.
Yeah. On Spurs, obviously, look, won the Europa League. Their owner, someone that you know very well, Daniel Levy, has been speaking as well. And he spoke after the game as well, spoke about the chances of Spurs going on to now win the Premier League and Champions League. Before I get your viewpoint, and this is what Daniel Levy had to say after that Europa League victory.
Enough. It's what we haven't done that is more important. We need to win the league. We want to win the Premier League. We want to win the Champions League. But, we want to win.
There you go. I mean, who doesn't want to win? But realistically, how far away are they from even competing for those things?
I mean, there's an old adage, isn't there? Don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. I mean, I did a television show a year ago, and one of the interviews I did, which people keep asking where it is, it'll be out on this television show soon, was with Daniel Levy. And one of the things I took up from him was this it's a lovely stadium, Daniel. I love it. Look at the dust in that cupboard over there where the trophies are. Is there something going to be done about that?
They've got one.
And now they've got one. Of course, ironically, a year later, they've got one. So I had to go and edit that out on the TV show. Yeah. But there's no doubt that Daniel Levy wants to be. Who doesn't want to be successful? But the success at all costs mentality is not Spurs. Is not Spurs. Raison d'etre. Daniel is ostensibly a very commercial animal, an accountant, and a very focused individual on making sure that the viability of the football club is not put in jeopardy by the emotion of trying to win at all costs. He doesn't have. First of all, Daniel's wealth is tied into Tottenham. He's not an independently wealthy man to the means of being able to buy £100 million footballers from his own pocket. He will be when he sells Tottenham Hotspur, and he's not short of a bob or two now. But he can't bankroll a football club. So the idea that Spurs have an owner in Joe Lewis and Daniel Levy that will prepare to bankroll the club. Joe Lewis hasn't bankrolled the club for years and won't do it now. And it's a different state now. It's in a family trust. And Daniel doesn't have the means to do it. So you either sell the football club or you become very aggressive at building the football club commercially, which he's done. He's built a stadium that some would say was great. I listened to Tim Sherwood.
Best stadium in the country.
It's the best stadium in the world, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And it gives them a start point to be able to compete. And the question is how far Spurs prepared to push it. So there's nothing insightful in what Daniel said there. There's nothing revolutionary. He would have said it every single year.
It's not realistic, is it? What he's saying isn't realistic. This is a team that finished 46 points behind Liverpool.
Sure, but we know the reasons why that. We know that a significant proportion of the season was compromised on the basis of Europe. We know that the manager could play a different way.
Yeah,
I'm not being controversial by saying that. He played a different way. He set up a different way when he had to play against Eintracht Frankfurt in the semi-finals and when he had to play against Man United, who were crap, by the way, but still he set up a different way and was prepared to, not be all hands to the deck in terms of let's go. So he can prove that he just didn't want to. He just didn't want to. And as much as I liked Ange Postecoglou and was a major advocate for him when he landed at Spurs and really liked him, I liked Antipodeans, full stop. I liked their can-do mentality. He came up short. And Spurs should never have been where they were in the league. They were there because they deserved to be, but they were there because they compromised certain things. They didn't think things through tactically. And so with that in mind, is it reasonable for them to say that, of course, if we can say whatever you want. Mm-hmm. Daniel didn't say he was going to win the Premier League.
No, he said it's a dream.
Their job this season, and it's going to be a fascinating one to watch because I'd love to know what the brief is. So I've not spoken to Daniel about Thomas Frank, but I'd love to know what the brief is. And I will catch up with him at some point.
What do you think it is?
Well, top four. That's the brief, be in Europe. That's the underlying funding mechanisms to be able to service the stadium whilst taking the benefits of the stadium income, whether it's F1, whatever else they're doing, whatever people don't like about it, whatever they don't like about it, it's the reality of sport in the 21st century. It's what it is.
Do you think they've done enough? So Kudus has come in, fantastic signing, although didn't look great for West Ham last season, the season before. He's almost been bought on what he did the season before. Thomas Frank's come in, that's it.
Well,
they tried to get him.
Well, a manager change is a big change. I mean, Spurs are a half-decent side. Do I think they need better? I mean, obviously, James Maddison and I have had a little to and fro about you never win things with James Maddison. He put a picture of himself up saying we won the FA Cup. Of course, he wasn't in the team at the time. So why he was in that picture, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that there were certain players that I think Spurs could improve on. I looked at players that they bought and I could never understand players like Timo Werner coming into the side because they weren't good enough elsewhere. So why were they going to be good enough for Spurs? They just were clearly economic. Kudus is a decent signing.
Yeah.
Is he a signing that wins you things? I don't know. And it's the translation of Frank, who is a very sensible, very likeable and very impressive manager from Brentford to Spurs is going to be an interesting one.
Jump.
But the brief is that I cannot imagine the brief isn't be in Europe.
And Thomas Frank, and
get out of the qualifying stages of the Champions League.
This is it, right? Yeah. As a manager that doesn't have sort of a lot of European experience.
But
hardly any, in fact.
I know, but the Celtic and Rangers have had a lot of European experience going out every time they go into Europe. So in the European Champions League, and they nearly qualified this time around Celtic. So we've seen, and Villa have had no experiences besides the manager did well, and the manager knows his way around that league, obviously, but the players not so much. But the fact of the matter is that we know that the format of the Champions League lends itself to potentially better outcomes than has previously been shown under the original format, or the format that we've been used to for the last 5-10 years. So with that in mind, Spurs going into the Europe Champions League now with a format change that's shown itself to play out quite nicely for British teams, gives it an extra oomph for Spurs.
Gives them a chance.
It gives them a chance.
Give them a chance.
But they've got to build on last year. Otherwise, the Europa League, despite getting a monkey off their back and being able to slay some of the critics, the moment those doors open again and Spurs don't start hitting the ground running again, the same criticisms will do. We won one trophy in 17 years rather than none.
17th last season. Where does Thomas Frank have to finish this season?
Oh, certainly the top six.
Top six, yeah. Okay. All right, the biggest transfer saga of the summer is obviously Alexander Isak. We have an update for you. Our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, is going to join us next for said update.
Benjamin Sesko's a man in demand, isn't he? And he's got a choice to make. Newcastle and Manchester United both want the Slovenian and have held talks with his camp. So where should he go? Former Premier League midfielder Darren Ambrose made his feelings clear.
I would go to Newcastle right now, because if I was a young player like Sesko, you want to play at the highest level. You want to play Champions League. You want to come and play in the Premier League.
Perhaps not a shock that he's chosen his old club, but some reckon 13 Bundesliga goals doesn't scream instant Premier League success. But our European football expert Kev Hatchard says that doesn't paint the full picture.
He isn't scoring in volume, but what he did last season was he scored a decent amount of goals for what was a really poor team. I mean, Leipzig didn't qualify for Europe for the first time in their short history.
talkSPORT understands United are very keen, but will have to sell in order to raise funds for the €75 million Leipzig are asking for. Now, Andy Farrell's named his final Lions test squad, who could make history on Saturday. A win against the Wallabies in its 3-0. The first time a touring Lions squad would have achieved that in almost 100 years. Our rugby correspondent Alfie Reynolds has the details.
This weekend, James Ryan comes into the second row. That means Ollie Chesham goes back to the bench and James Lowe drops out of the 23 entirely. Blair Kinghorn comes onto the wing.
Good morning, Ade Oladipo and Simon Jordan. Remember, with you until 1 o'clock. Jeff Hill is going to join us. Fantastic conversation. This, I say fantastic, alarming conversation. Jeff Hill is a former senior police detective. He's going to talk about security and footballers. So many footballers, the target of gangs. So we'll be joined by Jeff Hill, and I think this conversation should raise alarm bells.
It's also, but I also think footballers ought to take a greater deal of responsibility for themselves as well.
Why shouldn't the clubs deal with it?
I'll hold on.
If I'm an asset, should we wait until Jeff Hill comes, or should we do this now?
Well, no, we could do it with Jeff as well. But I also think, just as a placeholder, that this idea that football clubs should be paying for the security of footballers that they're paying £200,000 a week to have is a ridiculous thing.
But wouldn't you want to look after your asset?
Of course you do, but to a point.
Okay.
You know, what do you want to do next? Do you want to bath them as well, and do you want to feed them and ferry them back and forth? In fact, you probably already do. People have got to take responsibility for their own well-being. Movie stars have to do it, and so should footballers. They're very well paid. They can take responsibility. It doesn't exclude these parasitical turds that are doing it from the consequences of their awful behaviour. But I do also think if you keep mollycoddling footballers, not make them real world, because in the end, these players are not going to be footballers. They're going to be in society like the rest of us.
Very true.
They have to prepare themselves for the real world rather than the cosseted world they live in now. But we'll have that conversation with Jeff.
We will have that conversation with Jeff Hill a bit later. All right, covers are on at the moment in the cricket, so the toss has been delayed, which is disappointing. We are going to cross to our reporter Sam Ellard when there's some better news. All right, transfer news now. You just heard me talk about it just before the break there. Alexander Isak is the conversation. He's the topic of conversation all summer. And we do have an update. Let's welcome in our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook. Alex, it was touched on briefly in the news. He is training, but where is Alexander Isak training?
Well, where is Alexander Isak has been the big question for the past 72 hours or so, because he's certainly been conspicuous by his absence from Newcastle's training ground. I wrote about that in my notebook on the talkSPORT website on Tuesday, and we now know, in fact, he's in Spain. He's using the facilities at his former club, Real Sociedad. Newcastle, I'm told, are aware of his whereabouts. Of course, he missed their tour of Singapore with a thigh issue, but seemingly is okay to travel to Spain. And just to add an interesting little dynamic to this, Real Sociedad will stand to benefit if he does make that big money move to Liverpool this summer. Alexander Isak, they sold him for £60 million, and they've got a sell-on clause. So if they do get the £150 million British record fee, that's going to be quite a handsome amount hitting Real Sociedad's bank balance.
Simon, I don't know how much of that you heard from Cristiano. But
Sociedad got a sell-on clause above 60 million.
And no, he's training at Real Sociedad as well. That's where Alexander Isak is training right now.
Yeah.
He's gone back to Spain and he's training with them as opposed to training with Newcastle.
Very good.
Yeah. Why?
Well, because it's a full court press. You know, they're making sure that there are fault lines and division is created, that everyone knows that this is not a rectifiable situation and people will come to the table. So they're making it clearly evident that that is the case. There's no other reason for it, is there? There can be no other reason for it other than making sure that everyone understands. Alex, what is the sell-on clause that Sociedad have? Do you know the percentage?
Well, according to our colleague Ben Jacobs, if they were to get £150 million, they sold them for 60, they would get about £9 million in their bank account. You're probably better at the sums than me, but what is that, about 10%?
10%. Yeah, 10% sell-on fee. In terms of the next stages, I mean, everyone's awaiting this Liverpool bid, right? There's been so much conversation. I think Simon's touched on it. If you are unsettling the player, and clearly that's happened, when are Liverpool expected to bid for Alexander Isak?
Well, first and foremost, I don't think the intention, and I said this right from the outset, was for Liverpool to unsettle Alexander Isak. My understanding is that news of their verbal approach to Newcastle was leaked to the media by the Isak camp, not by Liverpool, and certainly not by Newcastle. And I think they will only bid if Newcastle contact them to tell them that they are willing to sell Alexander Isak. What I don't see a scenario here is where Liverpool make a bid that is rejected and then we get into a sort of series of bids being put on the table. I think they'll only make that offer once they know, A, that Newcastle are willing to sell, and B, what the asking price is.
Are Newcastle willing to sell, especially now we're hearing about Benjamin Sesko, potentially that deal that Newcastle were very interested in being hijacked by Manchester United. What is going to happen? Is it likely Benjamin Sesko goes to United or Newcastle?
It looks more likely that he goes to Manchester United at this moment in time. I think they're going to have to be a little bit creative with how they were to finance that deal. €75 million is Leipzig's asking price. They're hoping that somebody comes in for the likes of Alejandro Garnacho, Jadon Sancho, a bit of interest there from his former club, Dortmund. We know that Manchester United, we reported this exclusively yesterday afternoon, have sent a delegation to Germany to open talks with Leipzig. So this looks like another target that Newcastle potentially will miss out on. And in terms of Alexander Isak, the message coming out of Newcastle hasn't changed. The owners want to keep him. Eddie Howe very much wants to keep him. I guess the question is not if you keep him, but for how long, because we know that he's not willing to sign a new contract, not unless Newcastle can stump up more than £300,000 a week. So if we get to a scenario in January, and certainly this time next year, when his contract obviously is run down by another 12 months, I don't think Newcastle are in a strong position. They feel they're in a strong position this summer to be able to keep their star man.
What chance, Simon? It's almost looking like the situation has become untenable, right? Him training in Spain. What chance he stays?
Well, I don't know the personality of the player and how far he's prepared to push the envelope. And I don't know the agents. Now, the agent obviously sees an opportunity. If there's a transfer fee of 150 million quid being mooted, then the agent's going to be in the middle of that, making a significant amount of money. I think it's a case of, listen, every football club will sell every single player. No football club doesn't sell players. So the fact that Newcastle, in an ideal world, might not want to sell him doesn't mean that they're not going to sell him. And the fact is the reality of how much they're going to get for it. Now, if I'm Liverpool, I'm sat there and I'm waiting for Newcastle to tell me what they want. Well, it's very easy. I'll tell you what I want. I want 200 million quid. What difference does that make to you now? You're going to pay it? No. So what's the point of that conversation? If you want to buy my player, surely you've got to be able to put a bid on the table for me to consider. Yeah. I don't want to sell my player. I've never wanted to sell my player.
Yeah, Newcastle aren't going to give Liverpool permission to bid, are they?
Well, they have to give them permission to bid. What they're looking for is indications. And what they're waiting for is the erosion, I suspect. Well, whilst we can play it as Liverpool don't ever want to upset Newcastle and haven't wanted it to be leaked into the public domain, the moment you open your trap to an agent, believe me, you know that it's going to land somewhere because the agent's going to use it to his own advantage. The advantage in this move is to move Alexander Isak. The advantage to the agent is to move Isak. So if you tell an agent or approach an agent and give an inkling that you want to buy this player and gauge the interest level from the player, you are effectively announcing to the world that this player or this player is going to be sought for or sought by you, which means you are unsettling him. If you don't want to unsettle him, and you're doing it in a very simplistic way, and maybe I'm being simplistic, you put a bid into Newcastle and you do it legitimately. You don't use an insidious method of communication through an agent that perhaps should have kept his own counsel but never does. and leaks into the media, and then allow the player to be in a situation where he's got his head turned, he's either rocking in there asking for more money, and they're going to use that as an excuse. If Newcastle offered Alexander Isak 300 grand a week, he'd still want to leave.
Yeah.
That's a smokescreen. That's a justification. That gets the player out from underneath the ira of the fan. Well, hang on, he should be being paid that anyway. If he was offered it, he'd still want to go to Liverpool.
It seems like that way now. This is going to go on and on, Crookie. So we'll move on and talk about Chelsea and their business. And it looks like they are going to do business with Manchester United, or at least that's the rumours. What can you tell us about Alejandro Garnacho potentially coming down to London?
Yeah, this is one that first started really to emerge as a distinct possibility in the January transfer window, when Manchester United were open to offers for Garnacho and to a lesser extent Kobbie Mainoo as academy graduates. Obviously, if they do sell them, it goes down as 100% profit on the balance sheet, helps with PSR. Then there was that big fallout between Garnacho and the manager Ruben Amorim at the end of the Europa League final, after which, by all accounts, Amorim told Garnacho in no uncertain terms in front of his teammates, you need to get yourself a move. Chelsea obviously have strengthened in the wide areas this summer with Jamie Gittins. You mentioned Xavi Simons coming in as well. But I'm told that doesn't necessarily close the door on a move for Alejandro Garnacho. Paul Winstanley, one of the two sporting directors there in charge of recruitment, still keen to bring Garnacho to Stamford Bridge. I'm fascinated to see if this deal does happen, what the transfer fee would be. In January, United were asking for £50 million. I would suggest that because of the fallout between player and manager, they're going to have to accept a lesser fee. But if they can sell Garnacho, it would help potentially finance this move for Benjamin Sesko.
Sticking with Chelsea, it's like they're stockpiling centre-backs. Jarrell Hato's now been signed from Ajax, a young, promising defender, a good defender. They've got so many defenders already, but this one looks like it's now over the line.
Yeah, £37 million plus add-ons to the fee they've agreed with Ajax. He's flying in to undergo a medical. This is a player who's been on the radar of a lot of Premier League clubs. I know Liverpool at one stage were paying close attention to him as well, but it looks like Chelsea have won the race, as you've said there. And you do have to ask the question, what does his arrival mean for those centre-backs already on the books, the likes of Benoit, Badiashile, maybe even one of those established players at the end of last season in Trevor Chalobah? Could there be a scenario where Chelsea would be open to offers for him? Obviously, you've got Ben Chilwell, who needs to move as well. They are well-stocked, Chelsea, and there's been a lot of talk about incomings, but there's going to be a lot of departures from Chelsea between now and the end of the window as well. Raheem Sterling is still there and obviously is not part of the plans that Enzo Maresca has in place. I believe they're open to offers for the likes of Keane and Dewsbury Hall in midfield as well. So I think once this deal goes through, and maybe Garnacho as well and Xavi Simons, they are really going to have to start clearing the decks, Chelsea.
Cheers, Crookie. Appreciate it as always, my man. Thank you very much. Our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, keeping us updated as to what's going on with all things Premier League transfers. All right, the covers are off, which is good news in the fifth and final test between England and India. With news of the toss, let's go over to talkSPORT Sam Millard. Sam.
Yeah, morning, Ade. Set up just perfectly. Fifth test, day one of the Oval. England leading the series 2-1 with one to play. Remarkably, India have lost the toss for the 15th time in a row in all formats. England winning the toss and bowling. Overcast conditions, a little bit of grass in the wicket. You can understand the decision to bowl first. Ollie Pope is captaining England with Ben Stokes out with a shoulder injury. Atkinson, Overton and Tongue join Wokes in an all-seam attack. Jacob Bethel comes in to replace Ben Stokes at 6. India don't play Jasper Bumrah. They've stuck to their promise. He'll only play in 3 matches. Krishna comes in for him. Pants out with an injury, so Jarrell plays instead of him. Akashdeep comes in for Kamboj, and they play the extra batter. Jarrell comes in for Thakur. So we should get going at around 11 o'clock. Overcast conditions. England winning the toss in the final test match of the Oval, and they're bowling first.
Cheers, Sam. It's good, isn't he, Sam Millard? That boy knows absolutely everything there is to know about cricket.
He's a pest, Sam Millard's a pest.
He can be a pest and be good at the same time. All right, listen to Oladipo and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Remember, check out these month's real deals at selcobw.com. The Lions have named their squad for the final test against the Wallabies. We're going to be joined when we come back by former England head coach Eddie Jones. Good morning, 10 to 11. Ade Oladipo alongside Simon Jordan. We have the boxing hour coming up at 12 o'clock, which is going to be fascinating. Clarissa Shields had a go at me on social media. Yeah. Called me a hater.
But that's what
I was like,
they all do this,
because I just picked Katie Taylor above her in a pound for pound.
Every time you disagree. I mean, Frank was calling Tony Bellew a hater the other day, and Tony, I thought Tony spoke brilliantly.
Responded well to that.
Yeah, he spoke brilliantly. Spencer will be in here justifying his little mate Anthony Joshua's next fight, won't he?
He certainly will, especially if it's Tony Yoka. All right, let's switch our attention to rugby now. Eddie Jones has been kind enough to join us. Eddie, how are you, my man?
Hi, Eddie and Simon. All right.
Eddie, I do want to sort of put so much praise onto Andy Farrell and the Lions squad. But before we do that, let's talk about Australia. Obviously, the World Cup goes there in a couple of years. What have you made of the Wallabies so far in this Test series?
Well, I think their performance in the first 40 minutes of the game in the second Test was pretty good, and I think they showed enough, particularly with the youth in their test, to show that over the next year they can develop and really be a strong team at the next World Cup.
How much pressure is on Joe Schmidt? Again, you look at how they performed in the second Test. I thought it was fantastic. Again, you mentioned the first Test where, up until the last 20 minutes, they were good on that one. Is there any pressure on Joe Schmidt going into this third Test, which, look, means nothing because the series is done, but it's very important to show that Australia can fight back?
Yeah, I think the third game of a dead series is always really interesting because it becomes a one-off game, and it's how you can get your team up for the performance. And for Australia, particularly they've got the Rugby Championship coming up after this. It's important they keep showing they're making progress, and for the Lions, it's a bit of a free hit. They can go out there and really not enjoy themselves, but take the game by the scruff of the neck and go for it a bit more than they probably did in the second Test. So for Australia, it's how they can emotionally get up and then tactically, again, try to dominate the Lions on the game line.
Eddie, when I spoke to you about 18 months ago and you were playing hide and seek with yourself about whether you're going to stay at Australia, are you surprised at the decline of the Australian setup or did you see it coming?
Look, Simon, without going over old ground, when I went there, I signed an agreement where we had to restructure Australian rugby, for Australian rugby to be strong, because we're only a small rugby country now. It was pre-professionalism, we were a big rugby country, but now we've got a small player base, and you need to develop that talent really well, just like Ireland have done. And to do that, you have to restructure it. And it's a federal system in Australia, and it needs to become more of a centralised system. And until that happens, in reality, Australia is just relying on luck for good batches of players to come through.
Why has it fallen so far down the pecking order in terms of sport hierarchy in Australia? As you say, there was a time when it became professional that it was right up there with all the sports, if not the number one sport. Why is it falling down so far?
Well, I think it always comes down to leadership, and if you look at the two major winter sports in Australia now, NRL and AFL, they've had really strong leadership. They've had a fair dash of entrepreneurism about them, and they've just become such strong domestic competition. And what that's meant is that young talent now is choosing to go to rugby league or to Aussie rules, whereas previously the talent stayed in rugby. And the talent base has been diminished. And once you start losing your talent, you've got problems. It doesn't matter what you do at the top end after that. If you don't get through the talent at the bottom end, then you don't produce the strength of the teams you need to have to be commercially successful.
One thing the Lions do have is talent, right? And they've got it in bundles. It's fantastic depth. We're not going to see that depth, it doesn't seem so, on the third Test because Andy Farrell's only made a couple of changes. Would you make of him sort of sticking to that sentiment of only picking his strongest players? Although the series is won, it's not like he's handing out medals for want of a better word, to anyone. He just wants to win this and win it big and strong.
Yeah, well, I think the great thing about Lions Tour, you do get plenty. Everyone gets plenty of games. You know, they've had 5 or 6 non-test matches at least, so everyone's had the chance to play. But you know, to go to Australia and win 3-0 is a massive achievement, and you know, and it stands you in the hallmarks of one of the great Lions teams. And Andy doesn't want to miss that opportunity.
Where is sort of Andy Farrell? You know, when we always discuss sort of top coaches, you were always in that conversation for over a decade. Where is Andy Farrell now? I almost feel like going into this tournament, there was so much critique about Andy Farrell and the squad he's picked and the rugby in which he plays. Where is he now? Now that he has won this Test series, I mean, how do we look at Andy Farrell as one of the top coaches in the world?
Look, he's definitely in the top 4 or 5 coaches in the world. I think, you know, on the back of what Joe Smith did at Ireland, he did it. He's done it.
Oh, I think we've lost him. I think he was in Mars or somewhere there. You'd like to think that Wi-Fi and Zooms could work everywhere. I mean, look, Andy Farrell has done such a good job, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Again, there's always pressure going into.
He's got a great talent base to pull from, hasn't he?
He does.
Yeah, and you know the Irish team, that's the sort of staple diet of this Lions squad, are a very formidable group of players. You know, I think the questions about whether the leadership of the England captain, you know, was going to translate, and it has. Yeah. And I think, I think ultimately you look at this squad, and I think listen to Campese when he came on, and I was always trying to stick it in Campese's ribs because he's a typical Australian who likes to, give it a big and they're flat track bullies, and he was actually quite disparaging of his own setup and expected England to go over there and win quite easily. I make the point with Eddie because when I did a show with Eddie 18 months ago, he was the Australian manager at the time, and I was asking if he was going to stay. That's why I always poke him and say to him, "You were playing hide and seek yourself," because we had to then change the broadcast date by day because he'd announced he was leaving Australia despite saying he was staying. And he's an interesting character, Eddie. When you speak to him, he gives you brilliant insights.
Fascinating.
But he also talks about the denigration of the Australian system, and he talks about it in federal terms. He was saying something similar over here about England rugby and how English players are being produced fundamentally, taking Ellis Genge out of the equation, but through a sort of public schoolboy situation, which was only producing players that were acclimatised to a certain sort of life experiences. So he's making similar points in different ways about how rugby players are produced. It's difficult to say. I was going to ask.
Interesting conversation, isn't it, about rugby players being produced from public school?
But it offended people, and people took exception to it because he poked the eye of the RFU and certain things that he said, and I think he was right in certain things he said. I like him. I think he's a disruptor of people's thinkings. I think he's a bit Machiavellian in the way he does, but so did some of the best coaches. And I think some of the performances that England had and opportunities that they had as a result of him, I think they missed opportunities with him, in World Cup finals that they possibly could have done better in. But he's an interesting character and he gives you a different insight. But it's difficult to say the question about the British Lions and how formidable they were against previous versions of them, and how this British Lions side will rank up there with the greatest of all the Lions sides because of this 3-0 walloping of Australia. But that's not comparing like with like, because we're not comparing ourselves with an elite Australian setup right now. And so whilst on paper, in history books, in years to come, people look back and go, wow, they went over to Australia and smashed them 3-0, they will lose sight of the fact that Australia was in a very transitional stage in their rugby development.
Yeah, if the Lions do win on Saturday, they will become the first Test side to complete a clean sweep since 1927 in Argentina, so nearly 100 years. Good luck to the Lions. All right, what's the latest on Manchester City's case? Football finance expert Stefan Borson is in the building, and he's going to join us next to give us the latest.
Benjamin Sesko's a man in demand, isn't he? And he's got a choice to make. Newcastle and Manchester United both want the Slovenian and have held talks with his camp. So where should he go? Former Premier League midfielder Darren Ambrose made his feelings clear.
I would go to Newcastle right now, because if I was a young player like Sesko, you want to play at the highest level. You want to play Champions League. You want to come and play in the Premier League. I just feel as someone with ambition, you'd want to go to a club that are already on the up.
Perhaps not a shock that he's chosen his old club, but some reckon 13 Bundesliga goals doesn't scream instant Premier League success. But our European football expert Kev Hatchard says that doesn't paint the full picture.
He isn't scoring in volume, but what he did last season was he scored a decent amount of goals for what was a really poor team. I mean, Leipzig didn't qualify for Europe for the first time in their short history. They were awful in the Champions League, and yet he was still affecting games. He was still scoring goals.
talkSPORT understands United are very keen, but will have to sell in order to raise funds for the €75 million Leipzig are asking for. Now, Andy Farrell's named his final Lions test squad, who could make history on Saturday. A win against the Wallabies in its 3-0. The first time a touring Lions squad would have achieved that in almost 100 years. Our rugby correspondent Alfie Reynolds has the details.
This weekend, James Ryan comes into the second row. That means Ollie Chesham goes back to the bench and James Lowe drops out of the 23 entirely. Blair Kinghorn comes onto the wing and there's a place for Ben Earl on the bench. A 6-2 bench split between forwards and backs.
Live and exclusive coverage of that final test gets underway at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. And Tom Brady's told talkSPORT he wants to take Birmingham City up through the EFL the proper way. Ahead of the new season, the Blues owner has told talkSPORT they're living in the moment and not dwelling on the ill-fated spell under Wayne Rooney.
I have very high expectations for what leadership looks like, and I really felt like in the time that I had, we have to give everything we can to the players.
Remember, Birmingham open the championship season next Friday against Ipswich. That one's exclusively live on talkSPORT.
Good morning, Ade Oladipo and Simon Jordan. Two have become free in the studio. Stefan Borson has joined us as well. We are going to welcome in Jeff Hill a bit later to the show, a retired senior police detective, to talk about security around footballers and gangs targeting them. And Spencer Oliver is going to join us at 12 o'clock as we do our boxing hour, as we do every single Thursday. It is time now, though, to round up some of football's top business stories with Tesco Mobile for Business.
Business briefing on talkSPORT with Tesco Mobile for Business. Got a side hustle baking bread? Improve your take-home dough with business phone bills for up to 40% less than the big three networks. For verification, see tescomobile.com/business.
I'm delighted that this man has joined us. I mean, Simon was very keen on having him on as well. Stefan Borson, football finance expert. Stefan, I follow you religiously on Twitter, so to now put a face to your tweets is fascinating as well. Let's dive straight into this Man City situation. I say situation, it's a saga. It's almost become a bit of a laughing joke around sort of football circles. Their case, which was heard in December, and we all expected a decision on that case to be now, the summer, has now been pushed back to October at the earliest. Fill us the gaps there, Stefan. What is going on with Man City in this 115 charges case?
Yeah, well, we've spoken about it so many times in terms of the expectation as to when the decision is coming. The starting point is nobody knows, right? So from top to bottom, Premier League, City, the lawyers, nobody knows. There was an expectation, as I understand it, that they were going to hear around May, April. Now, why that expectation was there, I don't know, because it was never formalised. Obviously, we missed that gap. We missed the international window in the spring. And I think, I was on here talking with Simon and Jim a few weeks ago, and it felt that it should be imminent because I think on any logical basis, if you're the Premier League, you really want this now out. I mean, you do not want it infecting another season from a commercial perspective, and therefore it made perfect sense that it would come somewhere around the end of the Club World Cup and well before the start of the season. It now looks increasingly like it's not going to be today, tomorrow, and therefore probably not before the start of the season, because I think it's unlikely to be August.
Stefan? And again, maybe it's an impossible question to ask, right? We don't know the ins and outs of this court case in terms of why the Premier League or someone is stalling this. Why has it taken so long, and why is there a delay?
Well, look, we don't know whether there is a delay is the starting point. I think it was always unrealistic. Some of the press that was covering it was suggesting that there could be a decision in January, and that was never realistic. It was always, this trial lasted the best part of 12 weeks. And if you've got a 12-week trial, you're hearing from a lot of people, you're hearing from a lot of witnesses, you're hearing from a lot of experts. There's a lot of ground that was being covered within a 12-week hearing, and therefore the level of complexity would always require quite a lengthy period of deliberation by the panel. What we don't know is whether the panel was engaged to sit effectively from the time of the end of the hearing all the way through until they'd come to a decision and written it up. But I think the only thing that you can say is actually taking the time is the formal writing up of the reasons. And the key there is that they know that those reasons are going to be pored over for the next phase. And the next phase, and remember, this is going to shock a few people. We have talked about it before, but this is going to surprise people. We are led to believe this is only part of the hearing. This is only the bit that establishes whether Manchester City have actually breached any of the 115 charges. It doesn't look at the punishment. So even if City are guilty of everything, there is then another process around sanctioning. And the process that's going to entail is probably going to be a delay for people to digest what the decision says, followed by a process for an actual sanction hearing, followed by another delay waiting for the decision on the sanction. So there's only even part of the process. But the reality is that the allegations are so serious, the trial has been so long, and there's a three-person panel. They need time to deliberate. The only question, I think, is whether a more commercial approach could have been taken that says, we need a decision by the 1st of August, come what may. So you've got, you do whatever you need to do in that hearing.
How can that not be put in place?
Well, it wasn't.
How can,
I don't know.
How can a decision to say, okay, we need an outcome of this before the start of the Premier League?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I guess the only thing that you could say is, look, these are allegations that date back as far as 2009. So the idea that you could then say there's a need for expediency when they're incredibly historic allegations anyway, sort of is a bit of a contradiction.
It depends what you think expediency is. I mean, do you think the terms of reference were reasonable, given the nature of the alleged offences and the time span that it covers, and that it's been rehearsed for UEFA previously, and the Premier League have waited in line to have their opportunity to do it? Do you think a reasonable level of expediency is 6 or 7 months?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you.
It was reasonable for the Premier League to have set the terms of reference to an independent panel saying, we will engage you on the basis that we know that you can't forecast how long it's going to take, but we will engage you with the understanding that we must have this outcome by August the 1st, 2025.
Yeah, and I wouldn't just blame the Premier League. So I think first of all, there's the Premier League rules. So the Premier League rules obviously don't cope with a case of this complexity, but the Premier League rules do cope with vanilla PSR cases, and it does set out a timetable in respect of that, and it does say that the independent commission in respect of a vanilla PSR breach, whatever that looks like, does have to come to a conclusion before the AGM of the Premier League. So it's not unheard of to come out with fixed timetables.
This is a different animal, though, isn't it?
It is a different animal.
This is not a vanilla PSR case.
It is.
Allegations of fraud.
It is, but my point is that it's not unusual to say to an arbitration type panel, we need a decision by X. And that X, I think, really should have been tomorrow, 1st of August.
Does this, a question to both, does this surprise you? Does this news about it now being delayed till October at the earliest surprise either of you?
Well, it depends what the integrity of that information is. I think Stefan were talking off air about the reality of why that might be considered a reasonable scenario, because the courts themselves are closing down between now and August the 1st. This is not a court. This is an independent panel. So you're assuming that the people that are involved in the independent panel are part of the justice system that are going to stand down themselves and not be available for any kind of correspondence between now and the 1st of October. That might be the case. It might not be the case. I think people are throwing out what they consider to be explanations of why it might take longer, where it might land, and throwing out suppositions rather than actually having some real substance behind it.
And by the way, we don't know it's going to be October.
Exactly.
Right? So
it could be longer.
It could even be longer. Yeah, it could be shorter, it could be longer, but I don't think it's coming in August is the simple reality. There is not an expectation around that the decision is coming in August.
Does this make, for want of a better word, the Premier League look weak?
I think the whole scenario is damaging to the commercial brand of the Premier League. Now, whether does it make the Premier League weak is a slightly different question. I think they should have handled it in a different way. I wrote a piece in the Mail about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, where I warned about this potential glacial legal process dragging on and infecting multiple seasons, for it to go into another season. And we know for sure, even if the decision came tomorrow, if it's correct that this is only going to be about liability, i.e. whether City did it or not, we know for sure it's going to infect next season, right? And then there's also the question following sanction of appeal in the case that City are found liable for these charges. So this could still affect another 2 seasons. That has got to be damaging for the Premier League.
You posted, sorry.
It's interesting to see we throw these terminologies around about damages and what they will look like. Does it then make the broadcast product less alluring to the millions around the world that want to subscribe to it? So it's an optics perspective, it's a media-based perspective. I concur with Stefan's point of view that it's not nice to have adverse publicity, but with great respect, controversy sells more than good news sometimes. And the idea that somehow commercially people are going to run for the hills because this situation manifests itself is probably unrealistic.
Well, we know it's not. I mean, we know it's the opposite. Puma have just done the largest ever kit deal with City, right? So it's not worrying them, and there's clearly a lot of signs of confidence around City. Okay, so there's enormous spending. We know that they've bought, I don't know whether it's 6 or 7 players since the end of the hearing, since December. So we know that they're spending heavily. The stadium is almost now completed, which is a £400 million project. They're projecting an air of confidence. So and then you've got things like the commercial deals with both Haaland for 9 years and also for Puma, which is the record deal. So we know that commercially it's not damaging. I think it's a slightly different point as to whether it's damaging to the product and to the idea of integrity. If you've got such serious allegations hanging over a league when a team is winning constantly, okay, they didn't win last season, but generally have been winning consistently with this cloud hanging over.
It doesn't have the same, but in fairness to City and that particular observation, it doesn't have the same connotations as circumstances in Italy.
No.
Where teams in Italy were bribing and match fixing and circularity of money. I think what happened with Juventus is ridiculous because it's happening now in English football where clubs are trading with one another on balance sheet.
And with Juventus.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they did the Douglas Luiz deal, which was pretty similar to what they were accused of before.
Exactly.
Okay. I said, is it weak for the Premier League, the way in which they're handling it? Is it damaging for the Premier League if Man City win this case?
Well, I think it's double-edged. So I think it would be damaging for the senior executives that brought the case, that felt that this was the right way to do it, that felt that the very grand 10-year allegation case with 115 and trumpeting 115 as if it was a sign of strength. If they then lose, having made very serious allegations and spent, let's say, £20 million on each side, if the Premier League then fails to make its case out, it can only be damaging for the Premier League. However, on the flip side, it will at least protect the integrity of the last 10 years.
I mean, I think that this is a part of me, and it doesn't help my cause in relationships with people. I don't think the leadership of the Premier League is good enough. I think they're perfectly decent fellows, and I think they do their very best, but the football world has become far more sophisticated, and you need people that are 360
Owners are more sophisticated.
Well, yeah, they are. They've got more money. I
powerful.
understand that. But also, if you're leading the Premier League, you have to be the best in class. And with due respect to Richard Masters, he was the last cab on the rank that people could get to because everyone else turned the job down. And whilst I think he might have significant acumen in certain areas, he's quite polished at certain things, you need somebody that can actually commercially square all the circles. And if you're going to bring a case, and there was an argument suggested if they didn't bring the case, they look weak. And if they did bring the case, they look like they're going to damage their own products. If City win, then the Premier League itself becomes undamaged by the nature of the fact that they clean house, it put for a due process, and it was seen to be not guilty in the same way that CAS found the situation. If senior management in Premier League is damaged as a result of this, I actually think that's advantageous because they'll have to be taken out. And if they're taken out, they'll be replaced by better in class. And that will then enable the Premier League to evolve into a better state.
I do think there's a very good point that you raise about the people around the table. That is quite important. You know, we don't just have, we just happen to have some American investors these days. We have the great and the good in many ways of the US business world. We've got very senior people. If you look at who's invested in Manchester City, Silver Lake are one of the preeminent Silicon Valley investors in the world, bar none. You've got Woody Johnson, who's just a minority shareholder. He was the ambassador about 4 years ago. So, you know, you're talking about having a high caliber of people around the table. You've got clearly PIF there as well. So there's very high quality people that the Premier League management have to deal with and have to corral. And you know, 20 groups of these investors, that is not straightforward. But they have to, if you bring a case of the nature of Manchester City, you have to win.
This is fascinating, isn't it? All right, that was a roundup of football's top business stories with Tesco Mobile for Business.
Business briefing on talkSPORT with Tesco Mobile for Business. Got a side hustle baking bread? Improve your take-home dough with business phone bills for up to 40% less than the big three networks. For verification, see tescomobile.com/business.
We are going to continue this conversation, by the way, but there has been a wicket in the cricket. Let's go to Sam, who's watching the test for us. Sam.
England winning the toss, bowling first, off to the perfect start. Yashav Shajaswal goes for two. Gus Atkinson back into the team, going around the wicket, getting a ball to angle into the left-hander, who looked to work it to the leg side, hit him on the pad, was given not out on field. Ollie Pope, the standing captain, reviewed it. The ball was crashing into leg stump. Jaiswal goes for two. India 10 for 1.
Cheers, Sam. Thank you very much. All right, you're listening to Oladipo and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade go. More from football finance expert Stefan Borson. He's going to continue to join us next.
on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get ready for the golden era of sports betting. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
Good morning, you're listening to Ade Oladipo and Simon Jordan. We're joined by Charlie Robertson from BetMGM to look at today's top sporting events and discuss the latest odds. Charlie, we're going to be getting team news very shortly about the first North London derby to be played abroad. It's going to be played in Hong Kong, but which club are favourites to win it?
Yeah, morning guys. As you mentioned, Addy, with that game in Hong Kong, just thought it was worth a look at sort of the London clubs and the betting around them ahead of the new season. We've got a market on who will finish sort of top London club this season, with Arsenal the short price favourites at 3-10, Chelsea 9-4, and Spurs 14-1. Simon, Arsenal finished, I think it was 5 points ahead of Chelsea last season. They've obviously brought in Gyökeres up front, but we've all seen the potential of this Chelsea side. No, you've always been quite keen on them. Could you see Chelsea finishing above Arsenal this season?
That's a good question.
Yes and no. I mean, that's not much of an answer. I mean, I have not always been keen on Chelsea. I've always maintained the view that Chelsea aren't the car crash that people suspected that they would be. And that, if you spend as much money as they've done and you get the kind of players that they were getting, eventually they're going to light upon something that looks like success. Arsenal, by filling the hole that everyone suggests has been there for some time, which is the centre forward, you'd have to suggest that they are now really in a situation where it's going to be very little excuses for Arteta, unless his brief is keep on getting us inside the top four, we're happy with you economically. I will light upon Arsenal doing better than Chelsea, but I think both will be inside the top four. Obviously, from my point of view, I think both will be inside the top four. Who's going to finish one in front of the other? I'll pick Arsenal out of the two.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, no, I like it. We call that fence sitting here, Charlie, when they do that, by the way. Just both in the top four, but it is. And what about the third day of glorious Goodwood?
Yeah, I just quickly, Addy, if we just quickly touch on a couple of other London clubs, if that's all right. I'm just going to mention Brentford and West Ham, sort of the other end of the table. A few of the guys in the office thought those two teams might struggle a little bit. There's been a lot of money for Brentford this season to go down. I just wanted to get your thoughts, really, guys, if you thought those two teams were sort of in the relegation mix, or you think they might have enough. I thought West Ham, if Bowen gets injured, they could struggle as well. So just interested to get your thoughts on those two sides this season and how they might do in terms of the relegation battle.
Brentford will struggle, won't they? I mean, you can't lose in Burma, you can't lose Norgard, you can't lose your manager that's been sort of pivotal in the success of Brentford for 9 years, and potentially lose Johan Visser. That looks like it could happen with Newcastle and not struggle. I expect, and Keith Andrews, his first merry-go-round, and it's a Premier League job. I'll be shocked if Brentford aren't struggling this season.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the constant theme of the three clubs that come up not being good enough. That gives you that cushion. I'm not sure that's going to be right this year, but we'll see. Look, I mean, Brentford are one of those clubs that you would look at this situation and say, well, not only are they losing best players, they've compounded their problem or exacerbated them by putting somebody in that has no credentials, seemingly, in this role. But that's ignoring the factor of Matthew Benham and the thinking of Benhams and Blooms of the world that have turned water into wine most of the time and know what they're doing things, and they've got a succession program which has proven to be successful, because I guarantee you everybody in the world would have said 5 or 6 years ago, Thomas who? But he wasn't then managing a Premier League side. So it's a very different animal, isn't it? So with that in mind, it's a risk. But they're a well-heeled, well-set up football club, and I wouldn't be surprised if they defy the logic. And actually, I don't expect them to trip the light fantastic, but they might not struggle, because they might have enough around them in terms of substance and solidity to be able to overcome what we perceive to be, oh, this can't help them, this is a big problem for them, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, Charlie, on West Ham, very quickly as well, I expect them to struggle as well. Jared Bowen is fantastic. Everyone's a struggle, don't I, clearly? But if they lose Paquetá, Kudus is gone, and if Jared Bowen gets injured, I think that could be that. All right, go on, glorious Goodwood today. What can we expect?
Yeah, amazing day yesterday, guys. There was a dead heat and 150-1 winner. So, the bookies, like us, were quite happy with that. And yeah, just very quickly, big race of the day is the Nassau Stakes. See the Fire, I thought could go well in that at 9-4. And then a couple of races later on, the 420. Our racing ambassador, Megan Nichols, quite likes the look of Hey True Blue, who's about a 7-2 chance. Been given quite a good word about him, so he could be worth a few quid. But No, hey, True Blue, Simon, not Bonnie Blue, but that horse could be worth keeping an eye on. But yeah, should be a great day again at Goodwood, guys.
Charlie, top man as always, my man. Thank you very much. That was a look at the latest odds, all thanks to BetMGM. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Keep things golden with responsible play at betmgm.co.uk. 18 plus, gambleaware.org.
All right, very quickly, breaking news. Sheffield Wednesday have appointed assistant manager Henrik Pedersen after Danny Roll left the club by mutual consent earlier this week. He was basically the manager anyway after the start of the end of the season. So we'll see what happens there. Stefan, I heard you might stay with us for another section. Is that okay? Sure. It is okay. Up next, we're going to be joined, he's here, by Stefan Borson. We're going to talk about Crystal Palace.
Benjamin Sesko's a man in demand, isn't he? And he's got a choice to make. Newcastle and Manchester United both want the Slovenian and have held talks with his camp. So where should he go? Former Premier League midfielder Darren Ambrose made his feelings clear.
I would go to Newcastle right now, because if I was a young player like Sesko, you want to play at the highest level. You want to play Champions League. You want to come and play in the Premier League.
Perhaps not a shock that he's chosen his old club, but some reckon 13 Bundesliga goals doesn't scream instant Premier League success. But our European football expert Kev Hatchard says that doesn't paint the full picture.
He isn't scoring in volume, but what he did last season was he scored a decent amount of goals for what was a really poor team. I mean, Leipzig didn't qualify for Europe for the first time in their short history.
talkSPORT understands United are very keen, but will have to sell in order to raise funds for the €75 million Leipzig are asking for. Now, Andy Farrell's named his final Lions test squad, who could make history on Saturday. A win against the Wallabies in its 3-0. The first time a touring Lions squad would have achieved that in almost 100 years. Our rugby correspondent Alfie Reynolds has the details.
This weekend, James Ryan comes into the second row. That means Ollie Chesham goes back to the bench and James Lowe drops out of the 23 entirely. Blair Kinghorn comes onto the wing.
Good morning, Ade Oladipo, alongside Simon Jordan, who's not here. If you can pan to his seat, you'll realise I don't know where Simon Jordan is, by the way, but he will be here. Spencer Oliver's in the building, though. We are going to do boxing in about half an hour. Loads to go on, loads happening in the boxing world. Hopefully, we could be joined by a very special guest as well in studio. We'll let you know once that gets confirmed. All right, the first North London derby outside of England is taking place today in Hong Kong. The Moose is watching for talkSPORT, and he has team news.
Arsenal finally have their striker, their number 9, Victor Gyökeres, but he only starts on the bench in Hong Kong against Spurs. Nwaneri is dropped, Havertz starts as the number 9, and Norgard is the only summer signing to start for Arsenal this afternoon. As for Spurs, Richarlison returns, Kudus also starts. There's no place for Solanke in the squad, but James Maddison does return on the bench alongside Heung-min Son. It's Arsenal against Spurs, and we start at 12:30.
Thank you very much, Ian. All right, Stefan Borson still in studio with us, football finance expert. Let's quickly put a wrap on this Man City situation that will be ongoing. How do you think it plays out, and when? I know the impossible question, right? And what is the likely outcome here? Are we leaning now? Everyone seems to be leaning towards City. I don't want to say getting away with it, but being proven not guilty.
To be honest, I've not moved from my original position, in the studio, which is that the allegations are of a nature that will be very hard to prove. And furthermore, I think it's extremely unlikely that those people that are alleged to have been involved in what is a multi-year false accounting conspiracy, I think it's highly unlikely that happened. Of course, if it's proven, then the consequences will be grave for City. There's just no question. So I've not really changed my view on it. There's no facts that have come out. I think, if anything, the presentation of confidence from City, the number of negotiations they must have had with various players and various agents to sign these players, all of that are indications of confidence from City. So I remain in the same place I've always been, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, we have to wait and see. Me and Simon were speaking about Crystal Palace a bit earlier. Obviously, their fate, whether it be Conference League football or Europa League football, will be decided by a court of arbitration for sport. Date of that hearing is the 8th of August. How do you think that one plays out?
So the first thing to say is it's very interesting what Crystal Palace have chosen to do, because I did hear a bit of Simon before talking about Nottingham Forest as if it was a kind of choice by Forest. Nottingham Forest and Olympique Lyonnais have been added as respondents to the case, so they therefore have no choice but to participate. Now, that was a choice by Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace could have gone to CAS to purely challenge UEFA's position in respect of Article 5.
Stefan, push the mic closer to you.
Sure.
Perfect, thank you.
So they could have just gone on their own, effectively, and gone, OK, it's Crystal Palace versus UEFA, in the same way that Drogheda and I think it's DAC, the other team that had a similar Article 5 issue, they could have done that, but they chose to bring into the court of arbitration for sport, to bring Nottingham Forest and Olympique Lyonnais in. Now, what that means is that they probably had more rights to get hold of key documentation from both of those other parties, but the negative is that you will have a whole legal team from Nottingham Forest and Olympique Lyonnais presenting their case as to why Crystal Palace are wrong. So they've definitely increased the complexity of the appeal, but it probably signifies that on the core of the allegation that the CFCB are making, UEFA are making, that they feel probably slightly less confident on the core of that matter, and therefore want to bring in the other teams and say, well, what about elements of Nottingham Forest's case? What about elements of Olympique Lyonnais' case? Where can we try and unpick that? But there is some risk there because they've effectively brought in 2 additional legal teams.
You've almost brought the wolves to the door. They've invited Nottingham Forest to speak. And Nottingham Forest, and again, I get your point about Nottingham Forest have decided to kind of stand on their backs, but Nottingham Forest have decided to speak because Crystal Palace...
Well, because they've joined them into the process by making them effectively respondent. It's not a case of I don't understand that process. It's a case of I look at it and think, Palace don't feel that they've got a strong enough case to do it in isolation, so they're bringing in other aspects of it to be able to not just stop Nottingham Forest or Lyon getting an opportunity. That's not their objective. I think their objective is to suggest that there's inconsistency in the approach. in the fact that Forest, by the very nature of the suggestions that Forest have had conversations with UEFA that have shown a different sort of attitude towards the timings that were supposedly set in stone. Not that Palace could have complied with the second set of timings anyway, but the fact of the matter is that they're trying to make sure that no stone is left unturned, and it brings a ramification with it. My attitude is that, it's almost a bit of a liberty that Forest are making a case for themselves to be in a position that they haven't earned on the field. That's kind of the argument, the moral, sentimental argument that I'm making, which I don't particularly like as an argument. But I don't know if Stefan's got a definitive view on how successful he thinks Palace will be. I'm struggling to see how they will be successful.
I think the nature of a CAS appeal is that it is difficult to win. I mean, it is an appeal of following a process by UEFA. UEFA will go in feeling that they've done everything they needed to do. We know from the previous cases, the Red Bull case in particular, that they take the process quite seriously, contrary to what Palace fans would think. They take that, they understand that relegating a team from one competition to another is a very serious sanction. So they don't like to do it, but the UEFA obviously feel very sure about their position in respect of Article 5. And so I do think it will be hard to overturn.
Do you think UEFA as an organisation are particularly concerned if CAS were to overturn them? Because I know that High Court judges don't like to be overturned. They don't like to put situations in circumstances where they've given a judgment, they find it overturned. We've seen Court of Arbitration of Sport effectively overturn what UEFA did to Manchester City. So it's not without precedent, different circumstances. This is almost like a victimless crime to some extent. Now we've got a situation where neither club has any shared ownership model. It doesn't hurt UEFA in any shape or form if CAS were to put forward a situation where they overturned it, because Forest weren't in there anyway. Yeah. So Forest haven't lost anything. Yeah. They're only gaining something that potentially they aren't entitled to have in the first place.
Yeah, I think the lawyer. First of all, it depends what CAS say in the written reasons for why they're overturning it. If there's a lot of criticism of
will UEFA be in the room as well, making representations?
Yeah, absolutely they will.
My point is how rigorous they might be, because ultimately, if they're not that rigorous, because they're quite happy to be overturned.
Yeah, this is a good point. This is a very good point, because there are ways in which they can effectively release arguments,
absolve themselves a little bit.
Yeah, but it happens often in all of these cases where an argument that's put forward within the initial complaint or initial case is actually then de-emphasised when it comes to the actual hearing, and it's kind of dropped off the side. So I think it is a possibility that UEFA say, actually, this has now resolved itself, so we're not going to argue that strongly. But I do think that they are likely to have to sort of validate their own process around the decision that was taken. So that's the complexity for Palace. It's going to be very hard for UEFA just to sort of throw the whole thing in the bin and say, actually, now that it's been sold, we're completely fine with Palace being in there. I think, again, because Nottingham Forest and Lyonnais are in the room, they're not going to allow that.
That's the issue, isn't it?
Bothered now, are they, though?
Forest will be.
Why are they going to be bothered?
Because they're also, the alternative argument is if it's not Forest that Palace should replace, then we should replace OL. So OL are going to be in the room and making submissions to ensure that that CAS do not take their place.
Yeah, it sounds a lot more difficult now for Crystal Palace, doesn't it? It's not Crystal Palace versus UEFA, it's Crystal Palace versus UEFA, Forest and Lyon.
Yes.
Stefan, it's been fantastic having you with us, it really has. All right, let's get an update as to what's going on in the cricket. Sam Adler watching for talkSPORT. Remember, it's the final test, India versus England.
Yeah, England winning the toss, bowling first in cloudy conditions. India 24 for 1, the wicket was Yashasvi Jaiswal, trapped LBW by Gus Atkinson given. Not out originally, England reviewed it and it was out crashing into leg stump. Ollie Pope captaining, it's his first successful review as England captain. He previously had 14 reviews that weren't overturned. Sighted Arson's got 5 to his name, KRL not out on 10. Slow going for India, who were 24 for 1.
Cheers, Sam. Thank you very much. More updates from Sam throughout the show. All right, you're listening to Oladipo and Jordan on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. It's where the builders go. Delighted to say that security expert Jeff Hill, former police detective, is going to join us in studio next.
10k for Coldplay.
10k for Coldplay, indeed. Ade Oladipo Simon Jordan, member with you until 1 o'clock. Our competition to win 10 grand and a huge VIP night out at Wembley for Coldplay ends on Monday, not long to go. So we're going to give you the chance to win 6 tickets in a private box for you and your mates. August 22nd, full hospitality. And as you heard there, 10 grand spending money as well, completely tax-free as well. Here's how to enter. 18 plus UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, just simply text the word WIN to 83338 by the 4th of August, 11 p.m. and you're in the draw. It's that simple. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can post your name and number to Coldplay Competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 7th of August. This is a TalkSPORT limited promotion run on TalkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. Oh, I had to breathe in like 5 times just to make sure I got the read. Let's welcome in Jeff Hill, retired police detective and a security director of Harriet Global, an industry lead in security consultancy. Jeff, as soon as I saw this on the running order, right, so excited to speak to you because I find this conversation alarming, scary, and also fascinating. Footballers, we can broaden it out, but footballers first and foremost being targeted by gangs. How big of a problem is it?
It's quite a significant problem. I think what you read in the media is a fraction of what is actually going on. It's not just gangs, it's, individuals and small groups of people that are working together. But, it's a perfect cohort for criminals, footballers, because every year, a dozen or more multimillionaires retire, and it's refreshed at the bottom end with a load more coming in. So, as a group of people, they're perfect for sophisticated career criminals because that's where the money's at.
I was going to ask that. Why are footballers targeted? And you kind of just hit the nail on the head there because everyone knows they have money. Right, it's everywhere, isn't it? It's in the media. This person's on 300 grand a week. This person's on 400 grand a week. You go on their social media pages. You see luxury cars, luxury watches. I don't want to say they're inviting it in, but they're showcasing their wealth, which shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
But I guess to these gangs, it's kind of easy food.
It's not a surprise to criminals that footballers earn huge sums of money, and that's just one element of why they get targeted. There's a couple of others. The first other is the fact that their movements are entirely predictable. So you know when they train, where they train, you know what their fixtures look like for a season in advance. You know that when they play away, as a minimum, they'll probably stop away overnight. You know that close season, they'll be on a domestic holiday, pre-season tour, which the club tells everyone about, pre-season training. International duty, they're either playing for their country or they go on a domestic holiday. It's very, very clear to me, many others, and certainly criminals. Final element to it is that they're not very good at security. Brilliant at football. That's what they make their money at. But actually, when they try and look for security or to make themselves and their families more secure, they're in a marketplace which they're not familiar with, and they tend to go into it and they select what they think is appropriate, what's necessary for them. And the fact of the matter is that, virtually every footballer that's become a victim of crime had security. It's just they don't have the right security, they don't have it blended and layered in the correct way, and that's why they become victims.
Are clubs getting in touch with you as to how to help these footballers, or is it the individuals themselves, the footballers, getting in touch with you directly?
The people we work with at the moment directly are footballers, but we are having conversations with a couple of clubs about providing this service to their players. I mean, the domestic security issue falls between two stools. You've got heads of safety and security at football clubs who, in the main, are ex-police officers, ex-law enforcement, but they're there to prevent another Hillsborough, to make sure on match day that everything is managed in a way that keeps everybody safe whilst they watch football. You've then got the player liaison officers who are incredibly busy. They are servicing all manner of needs from players, and they do a really great job of that. But when they are asked about security, they're not skilled in this world either. So they go out, they do what they think is right, but often that falls short. And it really is a matter of not looking at security from the perspective of the solution, which is what most people do. How can this solution fix your security problem? Instead, what we do is we look at it from the perspective of the criminal. How would we do this?
Simon, we were having a conversation earlier, and I was asking who's responsible for this, for security for the player. Is it the club or is it the player themselves? When you hear that players are getting it wrong in terms of the security briefing or security personnel they have, should it not fall on the club then to make sure they pick the right one?
Look, players have agents, and agents spend their entire time creating opportunities for themselves off the back of players, whether it's commercialising outcomes for them, whether it's getting cars for them, whether it's sorting out, getting into whichever environment they want to get into. A menu of services can be provided by guys like Jeff here that can be then utilised, and if clubs want to be involved in it, the question is, should clubs pay for it? I've had this in my life. I had a situation in my life where someone tried to abduct me, and I know the circumstances that I had to provide personal security for weeks and weeks around because I was threatened to be abducted because I owned a very large mobile phone business and people were nicking mobile phones and they were lifting lorries, and then we got security around lorries and they decided that they were going to lift me. And that provided, I then had to go deep into it, so I understand what I'm talking about. And of course, being an owner of a Premier League football club came with security issues as well. The argument is a bit reductive to say who should pay for it. I think the players should pay for it themselves. Not because I'm mean-spirited, not because I'm sat there as some person that doesn't value the assets. I think I pay them enough money for them to take responsibility for their lives. Where my responsibility can come in is to engage people such as Jeff, get a menu of services, make sure that they're clearly visible to my players, and allow them to have either the benefit of a negotiation I've had on their behalf to get a rate from these guys, at the same time as vetting these guys, make sure they are who they say they are and the quality of service they provide, and then put it in front of my players and go, here is the suite of resources that we can provide for you, alongside banking arrangements if you're a foreign player, alongside, relocation packages and all this sort of stuff. Here's our security extension. But if you're going to pay someone 200 grand a week and make them multimillionaires overnight, I think they can pay their own security.
Yeah, but you were of an extent where you had personal relationships with your players, right?
Indeed.
Now clubs look at these players like assets. There is no personal relationship. Shouldn't clubs be protecting their biggest assets that are worth hundreds and hundreds of millions?
Sure. That's the argument that will be made on behalf of people that don't want to take responsibility for their own well-being. That's a great argument if you don't want to pay for your own well-being, if you think everyone else should have to pay for you. One day you're not going to be an asset of a football club. You're going to be an individual in the real world, taken out of your little institutionalised, closeted environments and have to take responsibility for yourself. You won't have your agent wiping your backside or someone else cooking your dinner. You'll have to do it yourself. So it's a balancing act between the two. I know the argument you're making, but no one can really seriously sit here and say, first of all, Maranaka standing on a pitch, does he think Gibbs White is an asset, or does he think he's somebody that he values and wants him to stay at a football club and supports him in every way he possibly can? It shouldn't be about... flip it in a different way, and not to stop Jeff from having his moment and talking about his services. The fact of the matter is what value do you put on yourself then? If you don't value yourself enough to provide your own security, why should I value you anymore?
Okay, that's a fair point. Jeff, in terms of the severity of this, what are we talking about? I don't know if you can even sort of divulge numbers, but how many people are targeted? Because we don't hear about it. It's not in the newspapers. I mean, you have to really sort of dig in deep into Google to find out these stories. How often are Premier League players, robbed?
Very difficult to actually say because there are no stats, because, we know a lot more than the general populace because we are engaging with these people. Very little is reported. You don't have a stat within policing records that say this individual is a professional footballer, and so you can't actually work that out. It is of scale. I mean, I was engaged with a very, very high-profile individual from football last week who was a victim of burglary last week. The criminals were in his house for 4 minutes. This is how good some of these people are. And I absolutely appreciate Simon's point there about players having responsibility for funding their own security arrangements, of course. But I do think, as Simon has suggested there, that clubs have a responsibility for making sure they get the best advice. Because the fact of the matter remains, if you're playing away overnight somewhere and your partner calls you and says, somebody's tried to break into the house, you're up, your teammates are up, we all probably live in a similar kind of area, everyone's anxious, no one's focused on the game the following day. And so the consequence tends to be how it plays out for the club. So it is a shared responsibility.
I agree.
I agree in terms of who pays for it.
Nothing wrong.
Of course.
Nothing wrong with a club doing its proper due diligence on making sure that security services are available for their players and that their players can then choose a suite of menus that they want to provide for themselves alongside the guidance that the club would give them. I mean, if we want to make it about who pays for it, then we can make it about that. But the fact of the matter is that anecdotally, he will know that there's quite a lot of cases because of the very reasons that he talks. He doesn't have to give you empirical data to suggest that we know. We've seen Dele Alli happen to him 2 or 3 years ago. We've heard about footballers. We know it exists. High net worth individuals. Players themselves have got to grow up a little bit as well.
I'm about to say that
they've got to stop this. They've got to stop this flash for cash culture of announcing everything that they do in their lives. And there is an element of that because they're young kids. They're walking around with 200 grand watches on their wrist, and the media love it. When Dele Alli got robbed, all we heard was how much were the watches. What about the kid? What about his family? All the media wanted to report was, and it was a 200 grand watch and a 150 grand Range Rover. Well, we know that people have got money, so we know what these things are, but that's the culture that we create. But I don't think there's anything wrong with what Jeff was saying, that clubs do the hard yards. If I'm going to buy a player, I'm going to do diligence on him. I'm going to find him somewhere to live. I'm going to give him all the prerequisite requirements around the area. It's going to be no skin off my backside to make sure I've got a top drawer security firm involved in making sure that they present to my players an opportunity.
Yeah, and the consequences of it maybe aren't spoken about enough. If a player does or is the victim of a burglary, or even worse case, I mean, I've read about players being approached with guns, and sort of the family being in the house. That's a consequence to the team, isn't it? Because that player might want to leave the team, might want to leave the area. I mean, you must hear stories like this.
Absolutely, and you know, I've heard it from individuals, relatives of players, that actually they're living in an area, as much as it's a lovely property, but they're living geographically in an area which they feel generally unsafe. I mean, I think as far as the consequences are concerned, the literal and direct consequences are, yes, of course, a financial loss. But, you know, if you're a victim of robbery, you know, João Cancelo, Ashley Cole, you know, these people have suffered some kind of physical force and violence. You know, you could be severely injured. It could affect your playing career. So, the direct and very specific consequences are great. But beyond that, you know, if you think about for one moment, if your home is violated, and particularly a lot of partners of footballers feel that if somebody's come into their home, they don't feel safe and secure anymore. If you're moving, and let's be honest, footballers live in houses that are 2, 5, 10 million on occasions. But if you're moving from a £2 million house to another £2 million house, just so you can feel safer, that move is probably going to cost you around about £200,000 when you take account of agents' fees, stamp duty, solicitors' removals, everything else. So immediately, a failure to actually address your security vulnerability has meant you've now got a bill for £200,000 because you're moving home.
What should security look like? If you are a top footballer in the Premier League, what's an everyday security look like?
Well, I think the problem with the response to security vulnerabilities by footballers is that they tend to lurch towards one measure, which invariably is security personnel. They have their part, absolutely. So does technology, so does physical barriers, lifestyle adjustments, etc. It is a blend of measures that need to be in place. And the important thing here is to understand that no one measure or a couple of measures in isolation will keep you safe. It's about layering them in a way that makes you just too difficult to take on. We're not about actually stopping people committing crime. We can't do that. We're not in the police anymore. And in fact, the police are overstretched and they don't always know who's committing these crimes. What we are about is to make sure our clients are safe. And unfortunately, those who are targeting them just go somewhere else. That's the best we can do.
Out of curiosity, you know, I know it's difficult to just suggest, but if you've got a layered approach, what are the sort of cost implications of securing a relatively high-profile footballer?
Again, it's very difficult to be specific because everybody is entirely different. Ballpark, if you're looking at just measures, technical and physical measures, a footballer who lives in a multi-million pound house, you're probably 50 to 100k
a year.
Yeah. Well, maybe not a year, maybe a one-off capital cost. There and after, you know, you're going to have an annual cost to make sure that's all maintained and what have you. But it's, I'm not trying to be vague, but the fact of the matter is...
That varies, we understand.
Yeah, and what you can't do, it's not a checklist. That's the important thing, you know, and we're very, very keen to ensure that the people we work with understand that, you know, we're very proportionate about what we do. If everybody had the same thing, then there would be huge costs. Does everybody need safe rooms? Does everybody...
You can't copy and paste your services.
You can't do
that. Footballer.
Absolutely.
Indeed. Jeff, really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much.
welcome.
Jeff Hill there from Harrier Global. All right, you know what the time it is. It's 12 o'clock. I see him there. The Omen is in the building. We're about to talk some boxing. Stick with us.
Benjamin Sesko's a man in demand, isn't he? And he's got a choice to make. Newcastle and Manchester United both want the Slovenian and have held talks with his camp. So where should he go? Former Premier League midfielder Darren Ambrose made his feelings clear.
I would go to Newcastle right now, because if I was a young player like Sesko, you want to play at the highest level. You want to play Champions League. You want to come and play in the Premier League. I just feel as someone with ambition, you'd want to go to a club that are already on the up.
Perhaps not a shock that he's chosen his old club, but some reckon 13 Bundesliga goals doesn't scream instant Premier League success. But our European football expert Kev Hatchard says that doesn't paint the full picture.
He isn't scoring in volume, but what he did last season was he scored a decent amount of goals for what was a really poor team. I mean, Leipzig didn't qualify for Europe for the first time in their short history. They were awful in the Champions League, and yet he was still affecting games. He was still scoring goals.
talkSPORT understands United are very keen, but will have to sell in order to raise funds for the €75 million Leipzig are asking for. Now, Andy Farrell's named his final Lions test squad, who could make history on Saturday. A win against the Wallabies in its 3-0. The first time a touring Lions squad would have achieved that in almost 100 years. Our rugby correspondent Alfie Reynolds has the details.
This weekend, James Ryan comes into the second row. That means Ollie Chesham goes back to the bench and James Lowe drops out of the 23 entirely. Blair Kinghorn comes onto the wing and there's a place for Ben Earl on the bench. A 6-2 bench split between forwards and backs.
Live and exclusive coverage of that final test gets underway at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. And Tom Brady's told talkSPORT he wants to take Birmingham City up through the EFL the proper way. Ahead of the new season, the Blues owner has told talkSPORT they're living in the moment and not dwelling on the ill-fated spell under Wayne Rooney.
I have very high expectations for what leadership looks like, and I really felt like in a time that I had,
building, Ade Oladipo, Simon Jordan, and the magnificent Spencer Oliver is here. Put your ears in, Spence. Go on, get them in.
Mate, go on,
get them in. Come on, look professional. Come in. First time in the new studio, at least. Come prepared, Spence. What's going on? Spencer Oliver is here because we have loads of boxing to cram into the final hour of the show. Remember, don't forget to check out talkSPORT Boxing YouTube channel right now for all the exclusive content, including our weekly Talk Boxing show, which I was on this week with Simon and Spencer. Head over there right now and don't forget to hit subscribe as well. Massively grown, the talkSPORT Boxing channel.
Yeah, I don't know how me and Simon doing. I've been carrying him for
How many numbers have you guys done now on Talk Boxing?
Hundreds and hundreds of millions. He talks about him being on it. We didn't want him on it.
I had to crowbar myself into it. And I sent an invoice as well. Yeah, it wasn't for free.
You had a very good day.
I had to snuck straight in.
What do you think of the new studio, Spencer? It's a bit like the Starship Enterprise, isn't it?
What do you think, Spence?
Yeah, I like it.
We've definitely got Klingons on the starboard bow.
I like it.
It is good,
You
isn't
like it, do you?
Yeah, I do. Don't
Very
you?
good. It's okay, isn't it?
It is nice, isn't it? You was with David Adelaide the other day.
I was.
How's he looking?
Yeah, we done
big fight for him coming up.
We went to the boxing booth gym.
Did you go on the pads with him?
Yeah, I did go on the pads with him. Yeah, did you? So I've got a little story. I'm going to give you a little story. Did you see that?
Yeah,
So
I did.
I put the boots on. Do you remember the boots that Adam Booth brought when David Hay was boxing for the world title against Valuev, the 7'2" giant? Do you remember?
Yeah.
And Adam Booth brought these boots that had platforms on.
Yeah.
Mad story behind the boots and where they come from, but it's probably not the right show.
Adam's wardrobe.
It's probably after 9 o'clock.
Probably not the right
after
show.
9 o'clock.
Anyway, I put those boots on to take David Adelaide on the pads. It was, interesting.
How's he looking, Adelaide? Because this is the step up. This isn't, no disrespect, Jimmy TKV. Some might even say this isn't Fabio Wardley, right? This is Filip Hrgovic, who for a time was considered like the boogeyman of heavyweight boxing. That's now done, but he's still a very, very good fighter.
Still a dangerous fighter, you know. He's still got a lot left in the tank, and this is a huge step up for David Adelaide. We find out more about him than we do Hrgovic for sure. and obviously Hrgovic number 2 at the moment with the WBA. So Adelaide goes and wins this fight. He puts himself right in the mix, so he puts himself right up there. So it's a big moment for him.
Yeah, not many British fighters. In fact, only one has a world title at the moment. And that man is WBA featherweight champion Nick Ball, who's been kind enough to join us now. Nick, you're on that David Adelaide, Philip Hrgovic card that we just speaking about. You take on Sam Goodman. How's preparation going? How's training going?
Going all good, yeah. Ready to go now. Just the last finishing touches and then, yeah, ready to go.
Nick, you are, without doubt, the most active champion out there. Always fighting, always staying busy. Is that key for you? Because we are seeing a lot of fighters now. It's almost once a year, twice a year. You're like free in sort of 14 months, which is quite rare for a champion. Is that key for you, just to stay busy? Do you prefer that?
Yeah, definitely prefer it. That's what we're in it for, aren't we? For the fights and staying busy, and mainly you're learning. You're learning in the ring. Obviously, you're learning every day in the gym, but when you're in the ring on your own, you're learning as other things as well. So it's good to stay busy and keep the fights coming in.
Nick, you're also recognised for taking on all comers, which we love. You know, boxing fans love as well. And Sam Goodman is one of those guys, undefeated Australian, comes forward. We can guarantee a tear up with you two.
Yeah, definitely. But you know, I can show that I can box as well, and it'll not be it. It's not just going to be a tear up or a war where it's going to be back and forth. I'm smarter than that. You know, I'm not a world champion for nothing. So it'll be interesting, yeah, if he comes to try and, you know, and fight. Yeah, we can do many things. So I'm looking forward to it.
Nick, I know fighters take one fight at a time, and that's all you'll be focused on at the moment is Sam Goodman. But you must have had discussions, you know, with the team around you on the roadmap for you. Is your future lie at featherweight? Do you move up in weights? You know, there's Noye and Nui there as well. Have you had any talks about possibly boxing him anytime?
Yeah, not recently, but you know, in the past his name got mentioned a lot, didn't it? Anyway, so they were planning on that. I think for December or February, I'm not too sure. But yeah, just for now, staying focused on what's in front of me and at featherweight, yeah, and then eventually move up, who knows. But mainly staying focused on what's in front of me and stay winning.
Nick, back to Saudi Arabia. I guess the scene of your best night, I fought against Raymond Ford, who I think we all can see as a fantastic fighter, world-class fighter, but also one of the disappointing ones in that draw against Vargas, a fight that I think everyone thought that you won. What's the mindset going there again? Is it just a case of maybe taking out the judges' hands, just making sure that you do get your hands raised at the end of the night? What's the thought process?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, that's what I've been thinking. You know, the last 2 fights there, they've went the distance, so I'm due a knockout there. So put on a statement, really, yeah, for everyone watching and for people who's making it happen. Yeah, they want to see exciting fights and explosive fights, and I'm the man for that.
Simon, what do you make of Nick Boy? Everyone's excited about him.
I think it's brilliant. Yeah. I think he was horrendously treated after the Ray Vargas fight in terms of the nonsense that the judgment wasn't given to him. I think he was great against Ray Ford. Mm-hmm. I think he's been great in his homecoming. When he fought in Liverpool, and I want to see him get opportunities to fight against the other belt holders in the division, so he can start taking belts from other spaces, whether he steps up or not. But I think he's a fabulous fighter to watch. Any space.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, that's what I said. He's a fan favourite for sure, and you know, the public appreciate that. He takes on all comers. And there is talk there. I know, you know, Nick said they haven't talked about it for a while now, but obviously Noye and Nui, there's talks about him moving up. And that's the sort of fights that Nick needs for that breakthrough moment when you go like, you know what I mean, when you get recognised outside of that. And then you're talking about coming into superstardom. And I think with Nick...
He must want the other belts, mustn't he? Don't you want the other belts, Nick?
Yeah, and them as well, 100%. The unifications, undisputed, yeah.
What's happening? How are you getting fights selected for you? I mean, what is the circumstances around you in terms of how you're getting opportunities to fight? You know, you've had certain fights that I thought were, with respect, slightly easier fights than the level that you're at, and I think you earned that right. But why aren't you getting fights against the other belt holders?
I don't really know, to be honest. I'm just a fighter. I turn up at the gym every day, do what I've got to do, and my manager speaks to me promoted, and they sort it out, and I just get in there with whoever they put in front of me.
And so far, so good in doing that, Nick. Good luck August 16th. Obviously, I think you always bring great value to every single card. Strange you're not headlining a card, by the way. It's always weird to not see Nick headline because you headlined the last few. But good luck, Sam Goodman, WBA featherweight strap. And hopefully, if you win that one, unifications or, as me and Spence think, maybe in a new way, showdown. That should be good. Let's continue the conversation about that card. Obviously, it's headlined by Moses Atama versus Dillian Whyte. We spoke about it together on Talkboxing on Monday. Where do you see Atama? We're already crowning him, aren't we? Which is always scary when we always sort of crown someone as the future champion before we've really seen him in there against someone with an acid test.
Absolutely. Listen, we're always guilty of doing that, aren't we? When you see a kid with talent that Moses Atama has got, you recognise it straight away, but he's still got to overcome those obstacles. He's got to develop as a fighter, and I think that Frank Warren is great at developing heavyweights, taking the right fights at the right time. And this is a calculated gamble because Dillian Whyte is very much still a live opponent. He will be going in there with his own thought process into how this fight is going to go, for sure. He's not turning up for the payday here. He's going in there saying, right, I'll get myself back in the mix here. This is a great opportunity. So they've got to keep their eye on the ball here because he is a live opponent, Dillian Whyte. But if Moses Atama is as good as we all think he is, he wins the fight, and he wins it in fashion.
Yeah, Moses Atama, it's almost like they're picking opponents for him already. One of the opponents that has been at least earmarked for Moses this year maybe is Joseph Parker. Let's hear from Joseph Parker's manager and trainer, Andy Lee. This is what he had to say about a potential Joseph Parker versus Moses Atama showdown.
For me, Moses is the future of the heavyweight division. For Moses, it's a risky fight. For Joe, it's a risky fight because there's no upside to beating Moses for Joe. There is. He's building his name. He's a significant heavyweight now, Moses, but he's an up and coming guy, and Joe's already at the top. So there's a risk for Joe, but there's a risk for Moses that he fights Joe, and there's never the same again coming back from it. If Joe has his way and if we have a way. But it's a risky fight for both men. And it's an exciting fight. Maybe it's for the vacant title. It would be worth it. It'd have to be worth it, you know what I mean? So, but there's who's out there? Anthony Joshua? That's an interesting fight, but does it happen? I don't think so. I don't know. I just think Joe has become a dangerous fighter for anyone to be in the ring with now.
Always speaks well, does Andy Lee. Correct myself there, by the way. I said manager. He's not the manager of Joseph Parker. He's the trainer. How do you see that one playing out if that's made? Because let's be honest, there will be noises. If Moses does look fantastic against Dillian Whyte, and you look at the rankings and they're both really ranked close to each other, Joseph Parker and Moses Atama, there will be noises to see Moses Atama versus Joseph Parker.
Of course. I think Joseph Parker is the interim champion. Moses is number one. That title becomes vacant. That's how that fight happens.
Yeah.
That title, Alexander Usyk decides he doesn't want to go in against Joseph Parker because that's the next fight that's been ordered, mandated by the WBO. He relinquishes that title. Then it's a must-happen fight because it's a case of Moses Atama getting the opportunity against Joseph Parker with the world title on the line. So you think, that's enough temptation for me to go right now because there's a lot of people talking about don't go too soon and all that, but when you get those sort of opportunities, maybe that is the right fight. I mean, I don't know where you're at on that, Simon, but I think...
ready for a Joseph Parker? I mean, yeah, if he's number one in the division, the validity of that fight for both fighters sits up on the fact that if the belt's stripped away from Alexander Usyk, which we think it will because he'll vacate and not take the fight against Joe Parker, there's absolute validity to that fight. If Moses goes in and does a number on Dillian Whyte, then you can't hold him back, and you're not going to hold him back. And neither one fighter is disadvantaged or advantaged in that. Neither one of them is a champion. They're both fighting for a belt, so there's huge validity in that fight for Moses Atama to be a world champion or to Joseph Parker to gain back a world title. Having been a world title once holder himself, I think it's a great fight. But it'll be fascinating to see how Moses goes against Dillian. I don't think they put him in against Dillian Whyte if they think there's real jeopardy for them. I think they might get a few rounds and get asked a few more questions than possibly they've been asked by Marius Wack and Dempsey McKean. But I don't think they think much more than that. And I'm surprised at Dillian taking the fight.
I think very quickly, I think that we find out about Moses Atama and whether he is at that level right now in Saudi Arabia, and that determines whether he boxes for that WBO title or whether he doesn't, whether he's not quite ready. And I think that's where we're at with it.
All right, there's been another wicket in the cricket. Sam, I'm watching for talkSPORT.
India 38 for 2. Chris Wokes gets KRL for 14. Not the best ball and not the best shot from the India opener, who's had a really good series with the bat. It's short, it's wide. KRL looking to cut the ball through the offside, takes the inside edge, and the ball crashes into the stump. So KRL goes for 14. Shubman Gill now come to the crease for Sainsbury's Arsenal, who's not out on 8. England have their second wicket after bowling first. India 38 for 2.
Cheers, Sam. Thank you very much. You're listening to Oladipo and Jordan on talkSPORT with Sesko Builders Warehouse. It's where the trade go. You're going to eat all those sweets, Simon.
I think I might.
You're going to eat all those sweets. Up next, we're going to be discussing Tony Yoka and Spence Oliver's best friend in boxing, Anthony Joshua. Is their match on the cards?
Only friend.
Absolutely, everyone loves these boxing hours. Ade Oladipo, Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver, who I'm going to start calling Mystic Meg now because he knows everything that goes on in the box. How many WhatsApp groups are you on, Spence?
You don't need
Quite
to know,
a few.
mate. You
Quite
don't
a few.
need to know.
Yeah. I really wanted Ben Shalom to come on today's show because I'm fascinated as to what goes on with boxer and their fighters. Joshua Boatsi has left box. I say he left. His contract ended in February after his last fight against Callum Smith. He's now joined Queensberry. And I do wonder what's going to happen with the rest of the stable. And it's a good stable as well. We heard Adam Azim the other day, in his words, whilst watching a friend of his in Bournemouth. You do wonder what's going to happen with Ben Whittaker, Fraser Clark, Caroline Dubois. These fighters are going to need to know what's happening and happening very soon, no?
Absolutely. Look, I've spoke to all the fighters that you've just mentioned, actually. I've had conversations with all of them, and they are unaware of what's happening. And, you know, this is an important time in all of their careers. I think Ben Shalom's done a great job building these guys up and getting them from prospects into some of them champions and some of them fringe contenders. So you go, they need to know now. You know, they need to be active. They need to keep working. And I think the radio silence from Ben Shalom's side at the moment probably isn't helping his cause, because these fighters will jump ship. They will go elsewhere. And I think that obviously there's contracts involved and it's a lot more complicated than that. But yeah, hopefully we hear some news from Ben soon.
Yeah, I even saw Billy Nelson do an interview as well. Obviously, he's got Martin Bacoli, who again, is quite a big name for the boxer stable. And he said he hasn't heard anything from Ben Shalom for the last few weeks. Again, look, I mean, you have to hear Ben's side of things to take that with any.
You have to ask. I mean, is there a matter of course? I don't know. I haven't spoken to Ben for a while. I know there's things in the offing. I know that there'll be new broadcast deal opportunities. But did Billy Nelson speak to Ben Shalom every 2 weeks then? I mean, people are jumping on bandwagons because ultimately Queensberry and Matchroom will dance on Ben Shalom's grave and take great delight in doing it and forecast the fact that they said this was going to happen. If Ben has entered into contractual arrangements, and I know that the Boatsi one was very specific because Boatsi left Matchroom for specific reasons. Yeah. He didn't want to go to his zone. Right? He wanted to go to Sky. That's right. So it was always evident. And the challenges that they were having with making certain fights, because one of the conditionalities of the agreement with Josh was enter the yard. And they couldn't make that fight. They had to make Willie Hutchinson, because I know, I got involved in the discussions with George and Ben to help the situation get resolved. But the fact of the matter is that if Ben has written contracts up that are conditional upon Sky and solely Sky, then he would have written contracts that he had no guarantee of being able to fulfil, because he never had the guarantee that it was going to be with Sky for the rest of his natural-born life. And I would assume that a lot of them are about broadcasting opportunities. So if Ben decided, now that boxing at the home of boxing is perceived to be DAZN, your mob, right? So would those fighters have not wanted to be on DAZN and only wanted to be in Sky? No, they'd go where the best outcome is for them. Yeah. So I'm assuming that Ben's put himself in some position, if he hasn't, then he's going to be a hostage to fortune, that his main responsibility contractually is to provide a broadcasting outcome. So they can all pack it in for the time being and wait and be told when the next... Or, if their contracts are predicated solely on Sky, then they're all going to leave. There's nothing you can do about it besides sell them a new vision of what the new broadcasting platform looks like.
How long can they wait? You're a former fighter. How long can you wait until you hear it? Like, most of these fighters want to go now. They all want to fight.
Listen, if they're under contract, though, some of these, I've seen some great fighters in the past that have been under contract with certain promoters and they've had a falling out and whatnot, and they've just been left there to rot for 2-3 years, because that is the game. You sign the contract and that's what it is. And sometimes the manager, promoter, or whoever it is you're in the dispute with will keep you there because you're under contract for there. So, like, we don't know the ins and outs of it and, what is going on with some of the fighters, whether it's is solely down to them having that Sky Sports contract written into the contracts as well. If as opposed to just with Boxer, then so it's sort of complicated. And only Ben Shalom and the Boxer themselves know that, I suppose. But after speaking to a few of them, a lot of them were saying, look, with Sky Sports was quite heavily involved with our part of the contract, but you don't know until Ben speaks himself. So we'll have to just play it out, wait and see. And it's a frustrating time for the fighters, and let's hope that Ben can come up with something, give them some sort of broadcast deal and get them active again.
Yeah, we wait to see. It's interesting. The same situation's going on in America with Top Rank, who have just had their deal finished with ESPN. So their fighters are very similar to the Sky Sports fighters right now. I called you Mystic Med because you mentioned something crazy that went viral on the internet on Monday. You said AJ potentially, and it's potentially, could fight Tony Yoka, a former Olympic gold medalist versus Olympic gold medalist. All of a sudden, a development with that Tony Yoka story is Tony Yoka has now joined Queensberry. So the dots are starting to be joined. Look at your smile. The dots are starting to be joined here. What do you make of this one? Tony Yoka joining Queensberry. I mean, is it just coincidence or is there something more to it?
Are you going to ask me if I'm surprised?
Yeah.
Totally not. Totally not, mate. Tony Yoka has joined Queensberry, interestingly.
Well, how does that help? How does that help Anthony Joshua, who's with Matchroom?
Well, because they work together.
Because of the newfound loving.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And I think that then it's sort of like a fight that's where in the past that would have been a very difficult fight to make and it would have been further apart than we ever felt. But with Tony Yoka signing with Queensberry now, Anthony Joshua looking for an opponent, we've got 5v5s coming up and various shows that are happening. Turkey obviously wants the best fighting the best, and we know all roads lead AJ to Fury, and AJ needs that warm-up fight. They may feel that that's the easiest option right now. Tony Yoka, who's, he's had his confidence knocked in the past as well, but it's a great opportunity for Tony as well. 2 former gold medalists, that's the selling point on it. 2012, Anthony Joshua, Tony Yoka, 2016, where he beat Joe Joyce. That's how you sell it to the wider audience. It's a fight that could well possibly happen, and I think negotiations are ongoing.
Yeah, I've heard that phrase, warm-up fight for AJ now for the last few weeks. And as much as I've been sort of banging the drum for Martin Bakoli or anyone else like that, they clearly want a rung down. And the rung down is, I guess, a Tony Yoka who's around, I don't know, top 15, top 20.
Ade, you get Martin Bakoli, who turned up in terrible shape when we were out in Saudi Arabia, and you saw the way, but it was 24 hours notice. He turned up in terrible shape, took that opportunity against Parker. You go, but the Martin Bakoli that's in shape is a very dangerous opponent. Now, you don't know what one's going to turn up. So what I'm saying is risk versus reward, and you're looking for AJ, let's say all roads do lead to a 2026 fight with Tyson Fury, which we all think is going to happen. You can't risk that going in against someone like Martin Bakoli, because
I agree.
The value's just not there.
Yeah, if you're in AJ's camp, there's absolutely no way you're putting him with Martin Bakoli if there is a Fury fight on the horizon.
Absolutely. And commercially, I think Yoka's an easier sell than Martin Bakoli, because, boxing fans know who Bakoli is. But when I'm talking about, if you're trying to sell it to the wider audience who, the guy that just likes watching boxing every now and then, you go, 2 Olympic gold medalists, and that's the sell and everything else.
I think the sell's Anthony Joshua, isn't it?
I mean, of course it is.
He's Teflon.
Of course it is.
And the credibility of fighting Tony Yoka is not there. This is a guy who gets beat by Carlos Takam, and Carlos Takam that was in the last rungs of his career. So with due respect to the credibility of the fight, because it's Anthony Joshua, he's Teflon for credibility questions, because we saw the build-up. We saw the build-up for Anthony Joshua in the big fights that he had recently. We saw him build up through Jermaine Franklin, through Robert Helenius, through Otto Wallin, through Ngannou, and then got chinned by Daniel Dubois. But he gets away from that credibility issue because he's Anthony Joshua, because he makes all boats rise.
Who would you like to see him fight, Simon?
A live one. A credible fight.
Do you not like the Tony Yoka fight?
Not particularly. I think Anthony Joshua's on a different level to him, irrespective of what the recent adversity suggested. And the public's got to buy into the journey that Anthony's on whilst paying for it.
But understanding the business of it, and you understand the business more than most, understanding the business of it, you go, we know where all roads are leading here. And we know where Anthony Joshua is positioned in his career. They're very much in the twilight of their career now. And you go,
if all roads are leading to Fury, why don't you just make Fury?
Just fight Fury.
Just fight Fury. Why even have the stumble then? Why have the bridge in front?
Just to stay active, because otherwise you just there. It's about motivation, keep ticking over and all that. I totally understand that from a fighter's point of view.
Fury's not.
Yeah, but Fury's that guy though, isn't he? Fury's a different animal. What I'm saying is Tyson Fury, like different fighters are tuned differently. Like some fighters like to stay active and they want that, and that's what it will all be about for Anthony Joshua. With Tyson Fury, he'll have a 3-year break and come and box a world heavyweight title, because
that's just how he is.
That's just the way that he works.
How he is. All right, up next, a difficult discussion, but we're going to have it. We're going to discuss drugs in boxing.
Benjamin Sesko's a man in demand, isn't he? And he's got a choice to make. Newcastle and Manchester United both want the Slovenian and have held talks with his camp. So where should he go? Former Premier League midfielder Darren Ambrose made his feelings clear.
I would go to Newcastle right now, because if I was a young player like Sesko, you want to play at the highest level. You want to play Champions League. You want to come and play in the Premier League.
Perhaps not a shock that he's chosen his old club, but some reckon 13 Bundesliga goals doesn't scream instant Premier League success. But our European football expert Kev Hatchard says that doesn't paint the full picture.
He isn't scoring in volume, but what he did last season was he scored a decent amount of goals for what was a really poor team. I mean, Leipzig didn't qualify for Europe for the first time in their short history.
talkSPORT understands United are very keen, but will have to sell in order to raise funds for the €75 million Leipzig are asking for. Now, Andy Farrell's named his final Lions test squad, who could make history on Saturday. A win against the Wallabies in its 3-0. The first time a touring Lions squad would have achieved that in almost 100 years. Our rugby correspondent Alfie Reynolds has the details.
This weekend, James Ryan comes into the second row. That means Ollie Chesham goes back to the bench and James Lowe drops out of the 23 entirely. Blair Kinghorn comes onto the wing.
Good afternoon, Ade Oladipo, Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver with us. This is the Boxing Hour on talkSPORT every Thursday, as you know. Loads going on in boxing, including a big fight this weekend. A WBA world title shot is in reach for Oscar Duarte and Kenneth Sims Jr., who will seize victory in Chicago, Illinois. Watch this Sunday live only on DAZN. Just sign up right now to DAZN.com/boxing.
Boxing update on talkSPORT with DAZN, the global home of boxing. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing.
All right, let's touch on this Francisco Rodriguez situation with the WBC. Francisco Rodriguez fought Galal Yafai a couple of months back. It came out that in his post-fight drug test, he had failed for the drug substance called heptaminol, which is under investigation, or was under investigation by the British Boxing Board of Control and UKAD. It does, and this is very important, this part as well. He did tell UKAD and the WBC what he was taking, which did include this drug, heptaminol. Because of that, he has been cleared, and the WBC have now ordered him to fight Galal Yafai again. What do you make of it all?
Well, the problem is that he had a no contest to fight before that as well, back in December.
He did,
if I'm correct, for failing drug tests again,
which I didn't know about.
And fight was ruled no contest. So this one, he said it was an over the counter energy booster that he got, and it had this drug,
which is disclosed.
Yeah, which he disclosed. So we couldn't really sort of argue about that. But it's concerning though that this he's failed now 2 drugs tests in his last couple of fights. The WBC have put him on a 12-month probation and reordered the fight. They've declared it a no contest and reinstated Yafai, the WBC interim champion, and they fight and they go over it again. Look, there's something to it, surely. I mean, the guy can't keep failing drug tests, and I think that do the governing bodies need to get a hold of this even more? Do they need to be more stringent? Simon, I might bring you in on this.
But the interesting thing is, if he's declared it on his pre-fight form,
yeah,
why wasn't the fight stopped?
Great shout.
That's it.
I mean,
there you go.
Where's the diligence?
Yeah.
I mean, for waiting for the post-fight results, he didn't need to. It was on the bloody form.
He's told you prior to fighting what he's taking.
And here's my concern as well with a lot of these fights that happen where the fighter is then found to have taken performance-enhancing drug or a fouled substance, a lot of the time they find out about that before the fight takes place. Now that shouldn't. I mean, you know, where's the credit in that?
The WBC wasn't in the fight that he had previously, where it was ruled no contest because he failed a drugs test. Right? Was that fighting for something involving the WBC? Are the WBC somehow not being visible of that knowledge, or why are they giving him two benefits of the doubt? We understand that he's declared it on his form, which means that they've got an understanding of their own internal mechanisms. That means that they weren't very good at what they did. Because in the moment I just said, why didn't they just deal with it before the fight was even put forward, in terms of the fight was actually undertaken? Because they could have done that. Now, that might be the reasons why, in part, they're going, oh, hang on a second, we've dropped the ball here. But the guy's a recidivist. The guy's done it once before. So how can they have such a very lax attitude towards the fact that he now doesn't get banned? He's on probationary evaluation. And that, to me, it shows you that boxing is not taking this particularly seriously.
He should be either. This is from the one in December, which was ruled a no contest. He should be on random drug testing from that point on. This probation that he's on now makes no sense. He should have been suspended from then.
But how does he look? How does he? Okay, he declared it on his forms that he's taken this substance. How does the WBC, after failing a drug test in his previous contest, performance-enhancing drugs, by the way, and they declared it a no contest, he's failed this one because he's declared it? That's okay. We'll put him on probation. You go like that puts the sport into disrepute. God forbid something happens to one of the fighters. Yafai took a serious beating in that fight from round 1 to round 12. He done well to see the final bell. The punch output was incredible. You don't know how that affects that kid moving forward. It was only his 10th contest. He's a former gold medalist himself. Yes, he's 32 years of age, but that could have a profound effect on the rest of his career. So, you know, you look at that and you go like, come on, man, like get a grip of this. The WBC can't be just allowing one, you know, it's one rule for one and another rule for another, etc., etc.
But the fascinating thing is he doesn't clearly know it's a banned substance because he's put it down on a form. Or whether he actually knows it is a banned substance and he thinks this is a get-out-of-jail card by denoting it and having not been picked up on it. Actually, he gives himself an opportunity to be...
There will be some cynics that think of the latter.
Yeah. Well, it must be, mustn't it? I mean, ultimately, he must have...
Especially considering he's failed his last test.
Yeah. And with that in mind, you have to say to yourself, how serious are people about ridding the sports of this particular challenge? Are they going to wait for somebody to be on the end of a very significant outcome, a very bad outcome, find someone fails a drugs test, and all of a sudden the mainstream media are talking about the banning of boxing and the taking down of the sport because people aren't able to enforce drug policies and people are dying in rings as a result of people that are taking PEDs?
Let's hear what Galal Yafai's promoter Eddie Hearn had to say about the situation. He spoke to IFL TV.
I found out last night that Francisco Rodriguez Jr. also failed a drugs test in his fight before Galal Yafai. Because I went onto his box rec and I noticed it was a no contest in Texas. And I thought, but normally on box rec, it will tell you why. So we reached out to the Texas Commission, who confirmed that he failed a drugs test. And I'm like, and I want a full report as to what happened in that process. Because we had VADA testing in place for that fight. But if I would have known that Francisco Rodriguez had failed a drugs test on that night, we would have had even more extensive testing. And I also would have said to the WBC, are you sure this guy's eligible for the eliminator? So you're telling me that Francisco Rodriguez has failed a drugs test in two of his last two fights on fight night. He had drugs in his system. And now you want to order the rematch. You've just put, or he's been put, Galal Yafai, in a situation where he has fought a man with performance-enhancing drugs in his system over 12 rounds. Physically, he took a beating that night. This is a disgrace that Galal Yafai has to rematch this guy.
Can I ask a question about the boxing industry? In football, everyone knows everyone else's business. Everyone knows what's going on. Everyone knows what people have got, what they haven't got, and what they haven't got. Is there a reason why a promoter wouldn't know that a fighter had failed a drugs test in his previous fight?
No. I think that
should he know? Should he know if his match? I'm not looking to go after Eddie here, and there is an element of hypocrisy because we had to listen to Eddie rant and rave about what Conor shouldn't have to face, irrespective of the fact that we know there are drugs in Connor's system, and here he is getting up his high horse because it's a different set of circumstances. But is there any reason why the diligence of a promoter making a fight wouldn't know that? Whoever the promoter is, Eddie, Frank, Ben Shalom, Callis Howland, is there any reason why they wouldn't know that when they're making the fight?
He would normally trust the manager of said fighter.
Yeah, but I think there's also, like, this is the confusion here as well, is also with certain governing bodies, certain drug testing companies. Why do they release it so late? They're saying that, you know, like, if they've known a fighter's failed a test, why do you only hear about it 3 or 4 weeks after that? And you're right, Simon, what you say. I think the promoter, the manager, they should do that. They should do that research into why was his last contest, Rodriguez, a no contest? Surely you're going to know that the reason it was a no contest was because he had performance-enhancing drugs in his system. So there you go. And they go, he's now allowed to box again. So you would have had extensive testing on this guy, knowing what you know, surely.
At what point do people start having a serious look, credentials and credibility-wise, at the WBC and the things that they do? And the manner in which they do them. And I hate to keep revisiting this, but it was a WBC that gave Conor a defence that he never asked for. They volunteered that information. They decided that they were going to provide him with a support mechanism, that he didn't advance that argument. He didn't say it was eggs in his diet. They did. They're putting 47-year-old fighters, irrespective of whether Manny Pacquiao put on a credible performance against a not particularly credible champion, in terms of Mario Barris, in terms of the quality he operates at, you know, and in circumstances like this, where you've now got them sanctioning fights, knowing that someone's already failed a drugs test, then going back and not doing their diligence on fight night to accept the fact that someone's filled in a form with a substance that they should know gets that person banned, and then have a rematch, and then allowing him to go on probation, and then sanctioning a rematch, and we can go on with the WBC about how they operate. At what point is someone going to turn around and fighters are going to start turning around and saying, "Don't want to fight for your belts. Don't want to fight in your space because you don't seem to have the prerequisite amount of quality, care and assurances around your proposition as you possibly should do." Is it all about sanctioning fees? Is it all about the commercial opportunity rather than the reality of the overall responsibility, which is the well-being of fighters?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, the WBC have a history of it, and that is the big problem. You know, you go back to that. You go back to the fight that you were just talking about there with Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah.
46 years of age, hadn't boxed for 3 years. All of a sudden, how do you jump that queue to get that opportunity? Like the WBC, you know, labelling that they're for their title. You go, where's the respect in that? God forbid something happens to this guy. He's been out of the ring. He looked terrible against Ugas in his fight before that one. He could clearly say the best days were over. He isn't going to have improved. And yet you're sanctioning that and giving him the opportunity over all the young fighters that are coming through. There's no... That doesn't make any sense.
With all due respect, and I like Lawrence a lot, you know, putting Lawrence in as number 5 in the WBC because he won the Bridgerweight title. You know, the idea that Dillian White had to wait 3 years as a mandatory challenger to be given a shot because the WBC weren't being particularly facilitatory. You can go on with this list and things about how they operate and start to think to yourself, this eventually will end up hurting the sport and hurting the credibility of the sport. And that's why people like Turki Al-Sheikh, albeit I've not had a 180-degree U-turn, I still think this challenge is as a result of his involvement in the sport, probably makes things look better. It's unlike the best disinfectant, isn't it?
All right, let's get another update as to what's going on in the cricket. Sam Howard watching the talkSPORT.
India 62 for 2, day one of this 5th and final test match. The 2 wickets for England, Jaiswal for 2, LBW to Gus Atkinson, then KRI all bowled by Chris Wokes for 14. Besides Siddharthan has 23 runs to his name, Shubman Gill has 11. Jamie Overton into the attack, not played a test since his debut in 2022, replacing Josh Tongue, who really struggled in his opening spell. Overton bowling a beauty to Shubman Gill, a ball that bounced and swung away from Gill, would beat the outside edge rather than taking it, but a good delivery from Overton. Just seen shot of the morning, Chris Wokes with a full ball to the left hand, decides Siddharthan. He drove it gloriously straight back down the ground for a boundary. So 15 minutes away until lunch as the sun starts to come out at the Oval, and if India can get in a 2 down, I think being asked to bat in tricky conditions, they probably taken that. England haven't quite been on it with the ball in helpful bowling conditions. Siddharthan's got 23, Shubman Gill's got 11. India approaching lunch on day one are 66 for 2.
All right, let's get an update as to what's going on in the North London derby, which is being played in Asia. The Moose watching for talkSPORT.
Yeah, 0-0. Arsenal 0, Spurs 0 in Hong Kong. Lively opening 16 minutes. Arsenal could have scored inside 2. Odegaard from the edge of the area with a shot that Saliba got his head to. Just went wide. Havertz inside the area. Should have done way better. Too long when trying to get an effort. And Pedro Porro for Spurs with their best moment. A corner he took on the left-hand side. Went all the way through the penalty area and hit the far post. Remember, Gyökeres, the new Arsenal signing, is on the bench. It's Arsenal 0, Spurs 0.
Thank you very much. All right, you're listening to Oladipo and Jordan and Spencer Oliver on talkSPORT with Selco Builders Warehouse. Check out this month's real deals at selcobw.com. More boxing chat when we come back.
$10K for Coldplay.
We've just been talking about Oasis in the studio. Coldplay are in action as well. Coldplay fan? Quickly, Tony, Mike.
I've got tickets, mate.
Coldplay?
Yeah.
You're everywhere, aren't you?
I'm there, mate.
You're everywhere. Everything this guy goes to. All right, our competition to win 10 grand and a huge VIP night out at Wembley for Coldplay ends on Monday. That's right. We're giving you the chance to win 6 tickets, private box, August 22nd with full hospitality as well. Here's how to enter. 18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, just text the word WIN to 83338 by the 4th of August at 11 p.m. and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or you can post your name and number to Coldplay Competition PO Box 3190 Colchester CO2 8GP to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 7th of August. It is a talkSPORT Limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Chris used to train in my gym, you know.
Did he?
Yeah.
You can phone him then and just.
Big boxing
did you
fan,
get
mate.
free tickets to that as well?
was
Did you
decent.
pay for these ones? Or did Simon sort you out?
No, Simon didn't sort me out.
So yeah, you paid for these ones. Someone sorted you out. I think he did. All right, there's been a lot of talk about Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul. That's not going away. Ben Davison has had his say on it. This is what he said. I don't like it at all. First and foremost, how can people even talk about it? Where's the safety aspect in boxing? Do you know what I mean? This is a serious risk with something going wrong. Unfortunately, it might take something like that for people to be like, hold on, we've got to reconfigure this. But somebody would pass it, somebody would allow it, somebody would sanction it. Is that talk done? Is that still a thing?
Well, I think that's
on your WhatsApp chat.
Listen, I think that's sensible talk there from Ben Davison. Because when you look at it and you weigh it up, you know, we go, yeah, look, commercially it would sell, and Jake Paul brings his fans, but the nonsense that they're talking. And I heard Nikita talking about it as well.
Nikita,
yeah. I heard him talking about it, saying, you know, well, Jake Paul's improving, and Anthony just come on, mate. That we're a million miles away here, and there is a possibility that someone like Jake Paul could get seriously hurt by Anthony Joshua if he took one. And so, you know, I don't like that talk. I think that hopefully that talk now does disappear and we see Anthony Joshua going down a different route and finishing his career against credible boxers, because they're miles apart, them two.
Yeah, I mean, it's too big. The disparity is incredible. Anthony Joshua is not by any shot worn, is he? I mean, for Jake Paul to even stand a chance in that one. Dave Allen, coming off that really good win against Johnny Fisher. I was there at the Copper Box. He looked good. Now it's rumoured that his next opponent will be Arslanbek Makhmudov.
Yeah,
which I'd never ever would have put together 12 months ago, and it's going to happen. We're here in October 11th. What do you make of that, Makhmudov versus Allen?
Listen, it's a great fight for Dave Allen. Makhmudov was feared. Like, you know, we go
rightly so. He's the scariest looking person ever, isn't he?
But he got
He
dealt
is,
with
mate.
by Ajit Kabayel.
He did.
Yeah, but going into that fight with Ajit Kabayel, we looked at that and you go, Kabayel's in for a hard night here, mate. It's not a matter of if, but when he gets knocked out. And Kabayel just took it to him and stole the soul, really, of Makhmudov and come out of a credible performance. Makhmudov has lost since then, but he's a scary guy, mate. He's got that little twitch, isn't he? Like where the neck just sort of goes. Giant of a man. 19 of his 20 victims, I will say, were knocked out cold very, very early. He's very heavy-handed. It's a massive step up. Credit to Dave Allen for taking the fight, but Makhmudov, if Allen can get through those first 3 or 4 rounds, we've got a fight, man.
Allen never been down, never been stopped.
No, he's a tough guy.
Yeah,
tough guy.
One.
It's an interesting fight. I mean, Makhmudov is like the love child of Nikolai Valuev, isn't he? And that sort of look, doesn't he? But he will have lost the luster or the aura has been taken away from him now, isn't it?
Bully that got bullied.
It's the aura. That's exactly what it is. Because when he boxed Kabayel, we looked at him, and when he entered that ring, we was all out there in Saudi Arabia, and he walks in there, and he's got that little twitch, and he's a giant of a man, but he's scary to look at as well.
Yeah.
You know, there should be. Yeah, he's just one of those guys that you just go, you don't want none of that. So that aura was all around him, and it was taken away by Kabayel. Once you lose that aura, like fighters in the past, well, Mike Tyson had that aura, didn't he?
Absolutely.
You know when he got beat by Douglas, you know, you looked at that and you just go, you know, that aura had left him, and Makhmudov's that guy.
That being said, Dave Allen's an underdog, no?
Yeah, he's got to be an underdog. Absolutely, yeah, he's got to be an underdog. I mean, I credit him for taking the fight, because there was a whole, you know, lot of opportunities out there. And Makhmudov, where did that one come from? That was nearly as insane as Tony Oka or Anthony Joshua.
Indeed it was. Spence, where are you next? I see you popping up at every single gym, ringside, everywhere. Making a coin here, coin there, everywhere, aren't you? Saw you with Roy Jones recently.
I'm going to have a little chat with my agent, Simon Jordan, after the show, see where we go from here. What do you reckon, Simon?
Where can you get him next, Simon?
Where can you get me, mate?
Yeah, who knows?
What are you laughing for?
Who knows? Simon's got plans for you. That's why Simon's got plans for you. Spence, really appreciate you coming on. Simon, thank you very much for coming as well. Thank you, everyone, to listening and watching the show. When we come back, it is Paul Hawksby and Charlie Baker.
Alexander Isak is training alone at his former club Real Sociedad amid uncertainty over his Newcastle future. He's apparently recovering from a minor thigh injury that the club says has kept him from travelling for their pre-season tour. It says talk of a Liverpool move has ramped up in recent days. talkSPORT's Alan Pardew